We call roll. Good afternoon, everyone. The Charter Revision Board meeting has officially started. Judy Stern,
Yes.
Chris Burtick,
Present.
Harrison Grant Williams,
Here.
Richard Weiss,
Here.
Jacqueline Scott.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum.
Right, the approval of the minutes from
Oh.
February first.
Should we start with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The approval of the meeting minutes from February first. Anyone have any comments?
No, these were good. Yeah. So I'm willing to make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So David, do you want to start talking about the chart revision schedule as well as the issue that you found with the study of the cost to do mail ballot versus the elections?
Hi. Okay, yes, so for the mail ballots, let me just pull that portion up. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so a standalone mail ballot, let me just get the quote up here. They are quoting it at excuse me one second, it stands at about 600,000, and that does not include other material costs or labor. So that would be to have a standalone mail ballot only election.
Perhaps that's probably because we also, the supervisor's office also provides prepaid postage, I'm assuming.
Yes, that is correct.
And then it depends upon the weight and how many pages, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And they didn't get into what the other costs for labor and everything. So I don't know what that would be. I can't imagine it being much more than that. So
So it's a basic price,
yeah,
plus or minus if it's a longer ballot.
I actually
Stamp will be, no matter what size the ballot is.
I thought you just said that, different.
inside I prepared a
It's just supposed
David?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I had actually prepared some estimates with regards to referendum elections. They're printed out, Jania, they're in a folder within there. I provided one if we were to have a referendum election on the November general election and March, if there's a presidential preference, which means that would be where all the voting locations would be open throughout the county. The cost, if we were to have it in March when we don't have city elections and them opening up our polling places, and then also one for the August primary as well. So I have some packets there that have the cost estimates in there. So if Jania, if you wouldn't mind, you could pass those out so the board could take a look at those. As for the timeline, do you want me to go into that now, Chair Stearns?
Yes, please.
Okay, so as for the timeline, as we know, we have to have the ballot questions into the SOE by 5 p.m. on June 10th, which is the first day of qualifying. The last commission meeting prior to that deadline is June 4th. So we would at the minimum have to pass a resolution calling for the referendum election with including on that resolution the actual ballot questions that would need to be approved so that we can provide that to the SOE at that time. And at this point, if we were to look to have a joint workshop with the commission prior to that, that would really leave the two meetings in May 7th and May 21st. Unless there was having the workshop the same day, the June 4th, that they would vote on it, but there is a joint workshop scheduled that day. So that really
And
leaves the two meetings in May.
And I think that would be difficult because you want to have the workshop for determination of what's moving forward, and then you need to bring the language back. That would be
Exactly.
somewhat
Yeah, that would
difficult.
be close to impossible. So, yeah, so the two meetings in May, which are May 7th and May 21st.
And we want to have time to take this to the council so that we can present as well.
Okay.
We need to have that into it.
Can I ask about, if we only have a meeting, wouldn't we want to bring it to the general meeting or to a board meeting? But we have a
I would think.
general meeting is May
General, that would be
14th,
the
and I
purpose.
pretty. I have two state representatives coming, so. Let me know. Then I have to move stuff around.
Don't we also have to?
Oh, wait a second. So Jim, you want to ask about the dates. Mary Peliquin, I just want to make sure that they have the names that go.
Okay, Mary Peliquin, President of the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Association.
And Jim Concanon, corresponding secretary to the Council of Civic Associations. My question was, when we talked about this early on, there was going to be a roadshow of sorts to go to the community, like the individual, maybe not individual, but collective neighborhood associations, condos, so that everyone had a good opportunity to hear what's being presented and comment on it before it goes to the commission. So now our timeline is really compressed significantly, and I don't know how we're going to do this as well.
Well, I think if we work with the May 21st date at the commission, that gives us time at the beginning of the May meeting. In your board. Exactly. So if we want to act then to the timeline. Yes, Richard.
Where this agenda came from, and I apologize if I missed it. That was some of the beginning meetings. But I had always intended in my head, not having vocalized it, but intended in my head that we would review the charter. And we would present it to the commission as a finished product. But the thing has taken a very long time. I, speaking with Anthony and with the clerk's office, this agenda is prepared with the idea that it's up to the committee for discussion, is prepared with the idea that we would want to have something on the ballot. And so we're sort of dancing around the details of this, but if we want to have something, I think the committee should vote on whether we want to have something on the ballot in November. If we don't want to have something, if the committee doesn't want to have something on November, then, we can do it slowly, plenty of time for everything, but then, then there's no reason to be worried about, meetings and stuff. On the other hand, if the committee wants to have something on in November, then, then we are on a short time frame, which is why I pushed the staff to try to arrange longer meeting because there's work to be done. And so that's sort of where I was coming from, which was I wanted to give the committee the opportunity to say, you know what, we want something on the ballot in November. We've discussed, 5 or 6 like pretty important things dealing with qualification of members, dealing with the elections and swearing in and sale of public property and stuff like that. So what I did was on the agenda is by the way, I want to thank Paul and Anthony because we spent hours and hours and hours together, the three of us, going over these items, getting things together, working on the language. So I want to thank them for doing that.
Likewise.
Yeah, and that's what if you look on possible items to be presented by the city commission, that's what that list is. And if the committee wants to have something on the ballot in November, then we need to move. And we do. On the other hand, if the committee feels like it's too quick and there's too much time and they need them, then, but I think that's the first determination to be made, because then we don't have to worry about, whether you guys have two people, you have time for us and all that. But I think that that's sort of where I was going. And if the committee doesn't want to go that way, it's fine with me. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to say, okay, these things are going on the ballot in November. They're very important. But if you don't, it's okay. I don't think any.
One of the things from past experience and past charter people, what we would do is select a certain number for each ballot. Because there is no way that we put the entire charter in every district and just on one ballot, especially in November. No mistake again. So theoretically, you're lucky if you voters to vote. Right. Right. That was that. 2022. Be consistent with the state law, such as, we have that with the special act that governs election, where it requires the seating and all that. So if we do all the cleanup of all the problems that we have, and then we continue, because we're not a committee, we are a board, and by the difference as defined by the city, committees are set for a specific purpose, unlike a board, which is ongoing work. So we have the opportunity to take the prioritizing, which is basically the things we've been discussing for most of this year, and move forward as we continue working through the rest. That's my interpretation.
We never.
And I think it's really important, prioritizing all the, all the factors that, were aired the last time that.
I'm a little uncomfortable with this brush, because at the very beginning, we were to go through the charter, we were going to then go out to the public, give them an opportunity to participate. There's been none of that, okay? I don't know if we have a dire emergency.
So, the discussions we had based on what prior. But we might do anything different than we've been doing for over a decade with the charter review board. And the discussion we had is that we would go to the council. And we always participate in the other meetings
Participates. Jackie, the input should be,
Jackie, we're not. They have the opportunity. On this for a year. We prioritized starting last January about what items were most important. And that's what we're doing. So everything is going to add into that.
so nobody has any input about the importance of taking it to the community, as was said from the very beginning. But the council is not.
And this is how. We have to agree, but I do this the way we expect it to say in the ground. But anyway, I give it to you. And despite the fact that he was kind of the teachers having the admissions, he to walk around. So So now we're at, and you get a year, over a year's worth of work down here, and you identify there's nothing else to say. That's how it is.
We want to get. So. I think that. With the new part, then we can figure out the questions that they want about it. You have real time, not necessarily on the battle. So these are meetings, especially for something that is objectionable to members of the community that we're not necessarily considering ourselves. But I think that these issues that do need to be corrected, we spent a lot of time working on this, and I would like to know that our work was going towards the productive end of presenting something in the workers.
So
And
there
I'm
is an
sure that
emergency
you
then.
had-
There's an emergency? I just want to understand the emergency.
Yes, we had major
I'd like to
emergencies.
hear from Harrison. What is the emergency?
I think
We'll
again.
go through the chair.
Yeah,
And we had the emergencies, and we discussed that several times. And we discussed the problems with the seating of after the election, the certification, that we were inconsistent with the statute. We discussed the issues of the residency issues in more ways than one, where the charter makes requirements that weren't necessarily fulfilled by employees, which is on here. So we identified a lot of major issues, as well as every meeting. The Council of Civic Association has been here, and no one has contacted us saying, come on out and speak to us. They've been the liaison, and how many members do you have in your Council of Civic Association?
We generally have about 45, 50, I'm sorry. And I'm just gonna say, if you're gonna go ahead with the whole, get it on the November ballot, you better put the pedal to the metal, because I understand how all these civic associations meet on my own. I mean, I'll have to apologize to 2 state senators and say, I'm gonna have to move you. I will do that, have a good relationship with them, but you've got to take it to more than just us, you
Well,
know, and
Give
these
everybody an
neighborhoods,
opportunity.
they plan their agendas in advance. So if it's gonna happen, you better decide, a good idea, decide tonight, because, you know, people gotta be notified right away.
And we have a website. We have a website, we have an agenda. We have had plenty of communications. We've been having meetings since January of 2023. Items have come forward. I'm sure that you all talk to your neighbors as well. The city commission talks and directs the fact that there are charter review board meetings. And I don't think that we have any more responsibility than what we've been saying all along we were doing. In January of 2023, we said that our goal was to get something on the 2024 ballot. So we have not hidden it. We have not been secret. We are on YouTube every month as well. So there's plenty of opportunity, as well as the fact on the website, there is a contact information that if you have any questions that you can submit. So again, the idea is we're not going to the public outside of, here's all the work we've done. These are the top priorities based on all the errors. Let us educate you. If you have questions or raise issues of other issues of concern, we are an ongoing board and we get to continue working on those.
So let me ask you a question. So
Yeah.
based upon what you said months ago, when things would come up, you'd say, when we go to the public, we'll discuss that. We're not going to the public. So everybody, if this is the direction you want to go, we're not going to the public. We're saying to the public, it's your problem. If you don't look at the website and look at YouTube, et cetera, we're moving forward.
But
That's what we're saying.
let me ask you a question, because these are sunshine meetings. They are posted. Every meeting is posted. So you're going, basically on your theory, is the city commission can't be taking action on their agenda because they haven't gone out to every homeowner first and.
No,
told them.
that's not.
Well, that's what you're saying.
No, not at all.
Well,
Not at all.
it's,
Not at all.
it is the analogy, Chris.
Before I give my comments, I have one question I'd like answered. If not in November, really, when would be the next opportunity to take this to the voters?
2026, November.
So that's what I thought. I'll follow up on what Judy said and what I've heard from, Harrison, as well as perhaps what I've inferred hearing from Richard. Some of these items that we started with are really hot button items with the voters in general. This first possible items under section 5, have to do with correcting very serious problems that we all perceived, as a board that impacted the last elections. And election, of course, is the heart of what the democracy is. The second issue that we attacked had to do with sale of public lands, the leases, what happened with the city having licenses and giving 100-year licenses when it said, well, there's nothing prohibiting a license. And so we're plugging holes that I think if we don't do it now, Judy, problem we have is, when are we going to do that? And boards change and people change, and then people come back in and say, well, I want to go back over what happened before I was a member. Or maybe we want to change these things. I think now is the time. We've worked hard. We have this core issues. I would also recommend that we don't add any new issues.
Correct.
But from this point forward, there is time to go to certain community groups. But the last time I was on the board, when we went to the community, who did we have? We have most of the same people here, if not in person, but the people who were in your positions beforehand. And I didn't see this overwhelming group of people. I do think it's important, and maybe we can squeeze in some.
Oh, if you are going forward, I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
May 14th, I'll make it
Yeah,
happen.
I think we should make it obvious, everybody in what we propose, why we propose it, what we think is coming to do, what we get to do. And ultimately, it comes to the budget. And then we ultimately need 30,000 people that we vote, which is where the opportunity that we have to do. We're not diminishing what we really very significant. We live, we have what we think is literally, if we think that people are very attention to that, it's going. We could never think that. Charlotte, the vote, they're not going to reach the business on the employees, and I think it's the country to that. That we use the workshop, this is pretty, but then that's the next publicly raised meeting, is on the agenda, is president. That individually projects activities on the process, and the evidence of the profession.
So this would be the way to moving forward, but we really have to discuss and then we'll keep communicating. Yeah. If we don't know each board, if they don't know, what is the step?
I mean, a question, if you do, I know you probably don't want to talk about this, but tell me a time frame. How much long of a presentation, just a presentation to be complete? So that's okay, I can watch it, so I think it's easy to me, I need to be honest, I need to be on. Okay, I think we're going to go on that.
Actually, yes, it is. Well, even if it's a homeowner, I'm not trying to do that. Or he's telling me. Yes, it is. If you had a great record, and that. Probably do a lot more. Okay. Like that.
On the cover of that, but cases, the assessment, pieces, this is able to cover. That's, what we also have decided that the other day of doing that in this fall was designed to manually sample citizen sections. We also have that available so that the three go-to meetings of the commission has before they have to workshop with that. What we can do is that we take the process we be going on. So, you know, other towns that we things, but the patients, you know, that we're going to do for that. I just clear.
But I can tell you right now, that's why I'm saying the 50% only left. Nobody's defined for any significant right now. Because, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do to the 20 people, but I can't tell you that. This commission meeting was terrific. And we'll just make it happen for the commercial. I don't really want to know what we're doing. It's just how talk we don't, but we're just, maybe what to do.
Way around, but this is two specific places. Now, I'm saying, disagree. On the highway, I think it's starting. Yeah, I think I'm trying to do. And they were going to do something like that. Also, it can be convincing, you know, one to be something on. The same, we're able to cut it out. Now you have 4 city commissioners that more likely will want to each community. Then speak for them. I do know one. So, it's like, and it said, it's when you create that, try to get this done.
One of what we do is like starting with support, it's really just not supposed to be studying someone, states and that we want, and what we mentioned is here. Yes, and we say that that would be, if you look at the past, again, public law in the past, there's no reaction to using it. And we saw that this thing that we said we really that we thinking of the basketball, is this is the next one that's that only the reason you can design that. So, I want to process from getting to that by having a very that is that kind of thing. The other thing is something that
You said that the items were prioritized. For these priorities from the commission.
as your, the different, what you say, last year, and for the most things that have something to do with taking that to private. But the one place for the music, you know, exactly how it's going to do, but as we edit, as we election, you know, well, heard, you know, process, and the ordinances that we have put accurately down, this is the state now in the Congress. But we would start, and it was free to use the name of parts to be executive. And that's how this year started, believe it or not. If you guys didn't have something, they have marriage. You have rights to look at that, to tell the people and speak at them. And they have nothing to come to you, you can see it, so you start get.
So that's the thing. That's the real design. Basically, that's the right. Those positive. But the threat is really drivers. There's a ordinance now. So. Great.
And then we already talking about staying there, but you can't wait. Every software is department and then that. Like these lines of as well as we do for free.
Then just want to remind everybody to speak clearly,
We already have since the year, we try not to have any side conversations because it gets a little.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. When we do have to make, what is in that, we see, in other words, the students working. Because again, as I see it, we have to like to be seen where it is, the website, so we need to place place where it's so that's on the website, so you have to turn them to see before we just this reason what to say, before the transcript, and they tell me from the end of the Give that responsibility of the second, rather than having this problem. You really need to share, and there's a request made, actually, one of the days you do it. And so if you, that's why it is. You want to ask me if anything else, because I don't think that's the question. No, we need to say, we don't need to say that. Let me take it together, as city management. Even though it's part of it, you know, it's part of everything like this. And by that I mentioned fine, we're not going to. I realize that the last thing I put on. The language. Established.
Well, if you don't mind, I think would be helpful with this because this is going to be sort of a semi-final vote on these things. Why don't you go through these articles as opposed to what you did last time? So to summarize what we've done, I don't think it matters when you did it because it's been so long since our last, I certainly don't remember. Just to go through the article, go through Criminal 3, summarize what we've done. And then we can look at the language as you're doing it. That's all right.
But
I think I know what Paul was saying. He says on this first one, 303,
Yeah.
final language to be approved.
Right,
Yeah, I think I may have to find previous description.
but isn't this
a while
ago? Oh, isn't this the 303, the final language that we're ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just.
And the issue was about continuously, so I
I
didn't
know,
know.
but I was trying to do a more broad approach, just tell us what we've done here. And
That's
then
what the final changes were.
what the final, all of the change, that we've made here. I mean, we can
What the
see
final
them, but
changes
it would help, I think, to vocalize it for people that are listening.
And everyone needs to remember that the language that goes on a ballot can't exceed 75 words.
It'll reflect this, that's the next level, we don't need to get into that. So, could you do that, Paul?
Well, okay, we clarified that the candidate has to have resided continuously as a permanent resident at least 6 months immediately preceding the date of qualification. Now, we changed that from election. We put in here that the candidate has to be an elector of the city, and that is what changed from being over the age of 21, so between 8, so anyone over 18 is an elector. That was one of the things you changed. And shall not be an employee or serving in any capacity in the city at the time of filing the oath, and shall reside continuously as a permanent resident of the city during the term. So that's mayor, the commissioner section, the next paragraph is similar. Except that there was discussion, you recall, about reestablishment of districts, so that the language that's underlined on the second page of it explains that.
You remember what we did on this, right? We were worried about moving boundaries and stuff in that language.
Correct.
Covered.
So, yeah, on top of the second page, whose permanent residence in the city is in a different commission district as a result of the reestablishment, and we use that word because it's used elsewhere in the charter, may seek office in the city commission district of his or her permanent residence that results from the reestablishment.
We had a big conversation.
Right.
So that's it for 303, that's what we did. And so just to get it going, I'd make a motion that we approve this amendment. And that we included it, I'm contemplating that we're gonna do some sort of a report to the city commission. And that it'd be the first item to be included in. Our
Right. Usually what we do is, right,
We'll have a meeting with them, correct? Not just a report.
Whatever they
Or
want.
the meeting.
well, we end up doing workshop, but first we submit to them like the communication. Like,
Like,
here's the
I'm
report,
thinking
what we're
about, assuming
doing.
this
That's a
goes, I'm
workshop.
thinking about next week, we send them a report.
Right.
And so we've done phase 1 of our work. And they can do whatever they want with it.
And we scheduled the workshop.
They can do whatever they want.
So that was a motion I seconded.
Can you repeat the motion so it could be clear? It was, what was the motion,
Move
Richard?
to approve section 303 included in our report to the city commission.
Okay. And Chris, you
I
seconded?
seconded.
Okay.
All in favor?
I,
All opposed?
Okay, 304.
next one, 304 is, you voted on this previously, and it is to delete the section that makes the city commission the judge of elections and publications of members because state law is there and the court system is there.
So I move that we include this in our report.
Second.
All in favor?
Go ahead, Paul.
Three point five, I believe I need to. Give me a second here. I believe I need to tell you what I've done since last meeting.
I don't think you need to. I think you need to just summarize what's in the final product and then you included what you did since that. So you don't need to worry about it.
You probably just lined it up with presidential election.
We made it consistent with 3.09. That's exactly what.
And we took out some language from 1988.
And we, one thing that I would like some clarification on, I understood at your last meeting that you wanted to designate a new designation of vice mayor anytime there is a change of any seat. Did I get that right?
I don't think that was the intent. I think it was when we talked about changing of the seat in the November election, and then you do it afterwards and it goes.
As in once, just to clarify, because I think I made that motion that the election of vice mayor takes place after the new board is fully sworn in. And
Right, but what I understood was in the event someone resigned or that anytime that there was a change in a seat, that there would be a new designation of vice mayor.
Yeah, at the first meeting after. So that's maybe
That's
something
what I
we need to
understood,
decide. with.
and that's how I drafted it.
But are we suggesting that the rotation would change? And that would be
There
up
is,
for
there
debate?
is no,
There's no rotation.
yeah,
There's
there is no
in the
rotation.
charter.
There's no rotation. So,
No.
so that whole rotation thing will go out the window.
No,
You
no,
don't-
no, you don't.
That's the way it's always worked, you know, it's like,
You're talking about a policy that the commission chose to adopt that it's not formalized in writing or required by law to do. It was a courtesy policy that they did amongst themselves.
for
So
years.
there's no
too.
requirement.
And they can continue to do it if they want to.
That's up to their own self. We're not policy setters.
So the question on this particular issue is if there is, in between the regular elections, if there's a substitute commissioner, do we want to have, a new election for vice mayor, or do we want to just leave it with the old vice mayor? But if you leave it with the old vice mayor and he's the one or she's the one who is out, then you must have an election.
Correct.
But say, do you want to have a step one? I got too complicated. Step one, do we want to have a new election for vice mayor if there's a substitute commissioner, or you want to leave the prior vice mayor?
I think that we leave it as is.
Leave it so that the vice mayor would stay the same, even if there's a substitute commissioner. Okay, the only thing that we need to add to this language is if the vice mayor is the one who is off, then you need a new election.
I thought that's what it actually said, the clean amendment. And maybe I'm
In
misreading
the
it.
event during the period between regular elections, if a new district commissioner takes office, at the first regular meeting of the substitute commissioner, the city commissioner by resolution designate a district commissioner. It doesn't deal with the issue.
Right.
You're right.
What
that's
that
what I
policy,
understood.
what the policy was that they had chosen to operate by. And again, it was never voted on, it's not put in writing, it was more so once it was designated, it continued with the district number versus changing and having a
So they
special
can
election.
vote, they can choose to vote by practice anybody they want. So the question is, do we want an automatic election if there's a substitute? Yes or no?
Say that again.
Somebody, do we want an automatic election of vice mayor if there's a substitute commission? Automatic.
I'm gonna say no,
Okay, okay.
unless that person was the vice mayor.
Okay, so I'm gonna move that we not have an automatic election, so we're gonna eliminate that language, Paul. And add language saying that the only time there would be a new election is if the person who left the commission was the vice mayor, in which case the commission would take a vote. Yeah, that's my motion.
The second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next. Well, you just need to draft some language. Okay. Both very good at this language drafting, by the way. Okay, next. Let's go.
All right,
3.08.
3.08.
This is the one where we just basically left it to state law in terms of form.
Yeah, by deleting that second sentence.
So I move that we approve this language. 3.08.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And again, that would be adopting with state law.
309.
With state law.
Okay. We had a lot of discussion about the organizational need to make sure that there was no confusion about what would happen. So I'm going to read this. On the date of the first regular city commission meeting, after the certification of election by the Broward County Canvassing Board, all newly elected officials shall take an oath of office and assume the duties of office. And then later on, we talk about of the meetings. And so we tie in. Comfortable? Yes.
I just want to make sure that we are consistent with the House bill. That was the special act that governs over us anyhow. And that's where last election, we were inconsistent with the state, with the special act of state law.
So what do you think? What do you,
So,
have you looked at
As
that?
long as we're consistent with state law, that's,
Well, this is also the one that we ran by Nathaniel Pittsburgh, and he was okay with this.
just,
Okay. So I'm gonna move this language, subject to Paul, you checking Judy's comment to make sure that it's consistent.
and
with
here's
state law.
copies if you
I
want
don't
to
want
see
to
the
do it
special
now.
act.
No, it's not, just,
I'll second that motion.
Paul, you feel pretty comfortable, we're okay with this?
I do. Remember Nathaniel Pittsburgh explained how this is possible within the parameter of
The
the special
Special
act.
act.
Good, okay, call the question.
That's all we care about. You made the motion,
And I second it.
seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3:10. Yeah, the first Tuesday,
By the way, about 3.09, private motor clean amended language, that's my fault.
the what?
I'm sorry.
What's titled clean amendment language?
I'm ignoring that, all I'm looking
Yeah.
is your,
Yeah, ignore that.
all I'm looking at is your strike throughs.
That's
Okay, 3.10 became superfluous because 2.09 will cover seating after a special election.
And again, that would make us now consistent with state law. That's our goal, is to make sure that,
By the way, I also play the cookies are great. Just saying. All right. 3:10, do we need, do we have a motion already in 3:10 or no, Junior?
No, we don't.
No,
We don't. We have a motion or not?
No, can you redo it?
yeah, and someone moves,
So moved.
second,
Who second?
You seconded, didn't you?
well, as chair, I usually
Okay,
don't.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for doing that, Art. These motions are getting very burdensome.
No problem.
Okay. 3:10 we did, 3:13, right, Paul?
Okay, so we deleted the time of 1:30. We kept public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions at 6. We added regular meetings in the second paragraph.
Okay, let's just go through this because this was complicated.
Yeah.
All regular meetings of the city commission shall be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. If a meeting day shall fall on a legal holiday, then the meeting shall be held on successive Wednesdays. Provided, however, that any meeting, the commission may by resolution reschedule commission meeting dates to dates other than those established in this section, provided that the resolution so adopted is public, blah, 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 at least 3 days before the date so fixed. City commission may by motion eliminate meetings for 1 month each year throughout vacations. The agenda for regular meetings shall be established by the city manager and shall provide for public hearings. Did we solve the problem here of messing around with the commission dates? Did we?
I believe that brought the clarity to the, misconception when they were saying regular meeting versus
Regular
an
meetings
action.
Shall be held on the first and third Tuesday of the month. What they decide to do, the conference meetings and the special meetings and the committee meetings and all the other things, that they do that by rule or however they decide to. But this says that there's going to be a commission meeting.
And don't forget, this is taken from the existing ordinance, but you wanted to enshrine it in the charter.
Correct.
My question is this, looking at this, Paul, because we want to basically mandate that they meet. Should the language be sort of switched around to say that on the first Tuesday and Thursday of each month, the city commission shall hold a regular meeting to mandate that they hold the meeting. As opposed to, this you could fool around with and you could say, all regular meetings of the city commission shall be held. Yeah, but if they decide not to have a regular meeting, then there's no mandatory language here.
What does the regular meeting mean to you?
Regular meeting?
Yeah, what does that mean?
the regular meeting is a term that's in the charter
Uh-huh.
that says that, the regular meeting means the meeting that they're gonna have the first and third Tuesdays of the month. That's what it
Okay.
means.
So we're not gonna put any language about the definition or how you call a 1:30 meeting versus a 6 o'clock. It's all gonna be a regular meeting.
First, certain, yeah, that's a regular meeting. They could do whatever they want with it. Ordinances, land use ordinances and things need to be held after 6 o'clock. There's certain things required by
By
state law.
law.
But
Yeah.
if they decide to have their meetings, start to have their meetings, whenever, 9 o'clock on Tuesday mornings, they can. But I am concerned, looking at this again, that there's a little wiggle room in here. What do you think?
rather than passive voice.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris, Harris?
I actually like having that wiggle room there because things that again are not necessarily regular commission meetings or CRA meetings with the same board or workshops will be scheduled. And also I do think it's, merciful to give them 1 month off.
But assuming the worst, which this commission would never do, or any other elected officials in the city of Vermont would never do, so I'm not just casting aspersions. If they wanted not to have a regular meeting, so they didn't have to swear in somebody, it doesn't say they have to have a meeting on the first and third Tuesdays. It says if they're gonna have a regular meeting, they have it on the first and third Tuesday, but there's no mandate that they have those meetings.
And I believe in that wiggle room because we've had this situation. You just had a meeting on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday because.
But they can, it says they can,
circumstances or family-
it says they can reschedule them, but I'm concerned, not this commission again, I'm concerned that if they just don't want to swear somebody in, they don't hold a regular meeting, and there's no obligation to hold a regular meeting.
Okay, when you're talking about swearing them in,
Because they get sworn in at the first regular meeting following certification. And if
well,
there's
no, because
regular-
they have to, that has to be done within the first 14 days, but special act in law, right? So,
But
you
there's
want-
a lot of,
well, we had that problem.
right,
That's why we're fixing it. So do you want to mandate that for the first Tuesday? Because by the special act, where it required, which is what they didn't do, but the state law required them to do, was within the 14 days of the certification, they have to be given their oath of office. But does that have to be done at a regular meeting or just,
okay, what we're
A
saying
special
here
meeting.
is that they're gonna get sworn in at the first regular meeting following certification. That's what the prior section that we approved says. That's what it says.
well, the special act requires it to be done within 14 days.
So is it possible that there could be an election certification? And
November elections are certified on that Friday. The Friday,
what do you think?
that goes back to this.
That goes back to the SOE and what.
Is it
Back to the
possible
state
that, is
law.
it possible that they don't have a regular meeting within 14 days?
Well, the clarity would be, wouldn't you be required to call a special meeting for the seating so that you can be consistent with the state law?
I know, but what we're trying to do is sort of match them up so we don't have to be jumping back and forth. So theoretically, could there be a gap of 14 days between?
All municipal elections shall be canvassed by the county board, certifying the results within 5 days after the election. The supervisor shall provide to each county municipality by the first workday. That goes into the system of setting the election, not accepting the election. Here is duly elected officials shall take office, not may, but shall take office within 14 days after the general election, with a specific date to be decided by local ordinance.
So the general election, if I recall correctly, is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. So the question becomes, if that day is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, so that'll never be November 1st.
No,
Right.
The latest will be is November 8th.
So then there would be a second meeting in November.
how many days away is that?
Well, why can't they? Okay, here's the special act. In any election, in any general election in races for municipal offices in Broward County, the candidate or candidates, depending upon the number, receiving the highest number shall be the winners. Such duly elected municipal offices shall take office within 14 days after the general election, with the specific date to be decided by local ordinance.
Okay, so let's just stop there. So what we have is that they're gonna take office at the first regular meeting after certification of the results by the supervisor of election.
And the certification still within 5 days after the general November election. Yes, Mary?
I just want to point out that this year, the election is on November fifth, which is first Tuesday, so that would be a commission meeting.
So the next
day.
meeting would be.
So the next meeting would be
12.
14 days, and that's when they would be,
Right.
and that's like really the worst case scenario, and it all works.
My feeling is that we should mandate that they have 2 meetings a month. That this language should be flipped around and it should say they shall meet on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. That have the regular meetings on the first and third Tuesday, and they shall have. They can change the date by resolution if we have that in here, but I just feel like, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna yield to Richard just because of his experience and.
I'm just
Draft-
thinking.
No, with drafting, and I understand your concerns, and I don't think we.
Do we want to mandate,
Yeah.
do we want to mandate? Because if we want to mandate, this language doesn't do. it.
No, I agree with this, but before we vote on it, I have another concern, but let's take care of yours first.
So what do you think, Carson?
Um,
You were wanting to have flexibility. I'm afraid of, I'm translating flexibility
No, I
into
know.
fooling around.
again, I'm trying to think of the circumstance under which we're not in compliance with the state law, and the best I can come up with is an extreme version of a recount that winds up in litigation, but that's the exception, not the rule anyway. I don't know. I think that this is fairly clear. I mean, if we really do want to just change the language to say the city commission shall hold regular meetings on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. I think it's close enough to the existing language. I respect your point, so I wouldn't mind making that change. I just don't think it's. I can't conceive of the circumstance under which this would not cover
This current, the language here, or the language that we're suggesting changing.
suggesting.
But I mean, I'm just seeing is that we spend hours and hours
Right.
between Paul and Nancy and I going over this stuff, but now I'm just seeing it again. And I see that somebody, if they want to fool around, think they could fool around with this.
All I care about personally is that we finally adopt what would put us consistent with the state law, which was shall be within 14 days of the certification. The rest of it I leave to
It's
you.
not 14 days of the certification, it's 14 days of the election.
Yep.
Right? Check it through.
General election.
The only time that sort of gets messed up is if the supervisor of elections doesn't certify quick enough.
Well, they're mandated by state law and the local elections to have it done in 5 days.
Yeah, but when we get to the overseas ballots.
It doesn't matter.
No, I understand, but we witness personally how.
Because let's say they take the 5 days. So,
See, in November elections, they are required by law to do 5 days. In
Yes, I-
March elections, they have, I believe it's 14 days.
so the 5 days is part of the 14 days. See, the state law says they have to certify within 5 days, right?
Correct.
The state law also says that they have to be sworn in within 14 days. So basically, the
Correct.
5 days is part of the 14 days. Yeah.
But I agree with Harrison, it does not materially make a difference, and if you are concerned about it, yeah, I think.
Well,
You're taking out the gamesmanship or the possibility of gamesmanship.
Right, and so if we want to leave the flexibility, that's fine, this language is flexible. If we don't want to leave flex, then I think the language needs to change, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
And that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so let's change it. If we don't want to leave any flexibility.
So do you want to
Okay.
do an amendment to?
Well,
Well, we have to revise the
Yes,
question.
Bill.
When you look, does the flexibility enough lie that it says if a meeting shall fall on a legal holiday, what about an election day? That should specify language about election day.
that's a legal holiday, right? Election day.
Well, is that within the definition of a legal holiday?
It's not. I think election days.
No,
I don't think that.
It's not.
No, at least at the county level, we don't have commission meetings on Tuesdays that are election.
But it also
It's a
says-
courtesy,
but
But
it
we
also
have
says-
had city elections on election days.
Yeah, Jim, it also says provide however that any meeting made by resolution reschedule commission meeting dates to dates other than established, so they can, they're automatically readjusted if it's a legal holiday.
But then they have the
But
discretion.
then they have the discretion.
Right,
Yeah, I
because
think that's
election days
what-
not legal.
Tim, that was a good question, very good question. Okay, so I think they should say, if we don't want flexibility, they should say, the city commission shall hold regular meetings on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. That's what I mean.
I second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
can I,
I'll second that.
oh,
Okay.
Yes, Paul.
okay, I just want to bring your attention to what is crossed out, and that's the language about, of course, the usual place of holding meetings, we discussed that, but also a special meeting may be held elsewhere, so there's really no, I don't think there's any mention. Never mind, because at the very end, the time and place of special meeting shall be set by resolution.
And I think if the city commission decides that they want to have a regular city commission meeting, in one of the neighborhoods to give, neighbors an opportunity to be close up, that's fine. Let's say they
That would
want to
be a
have it in the
production.
West End City Hall or someplace like that. They could. I don't see any problem with that. Okay. All right.
Can I move on to?
Yes.
313?
Are we done with this? Did we move this? Are we done?
Just that one thing there, not the whole thing, just
Correct.
paragraph. Second paragraph. Says the agenda for regular meetings shall be established by the city manager and shall provide for public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions and motions to be heard at 6 p.m. This is, earlier you said, well, they
Yeah.
can start the meeting at any time
Right,
except for
inconsistent.
certain things.
Yeah.
Now we have ordinances, resolutions, so.
That's a good question.
Yeah, and the second thing that I have, and we spoke about, but I don't know if we ever resolved. Do we want to put a time period prior to the meetings other than through sunshine as to not only the agenda, but the backup materials made available to the public? Because lately we have had the situation, my understanding, where the backup was provided on the day of
How's
the
the
meeting.
meeting? That's correct.
Yeah.
All right, so let's deal with one thing at a time, which is, I think you're right. I think that I would eliminate this whole section. I don't think I would eliminate the whole section. Except maybe just designate the manager to prepare I don't think that state law says which things need to be done after 6 o'clock. And the other ones, they can hold them, they can hear them whatever they want.
So Richard, you're saying that the 6 p.m. that we've put in here is what the state law mandates anyhow.
Correct, for land use items.
For land use
Second,
items.
I'm
We're going beyond that.
Well,
It might actually be 501,
what do you mean by 501?
501. So
Yeah, but I think it has to be after 5 o'clock.
Five. Oh, yes.
But see, I think even if you didn't put anything in
1
here,
minute after.
it's required by state law. Like budget hearings, I think
Yeah.
have to be after a certain time
Right.
too. So if you just had this section saying that the agenda shall be prepared by the city manager, I don't think you need anything else really.
yeah, at least one,
Go ahead.
at least one hearing shall be held after 5 p.m. on a weekday.
Yeah.
Can I share maybe a
Sure.
theory about the 6? It was probably intended to make it available to people who work, and so that they can be there in the evening and
That's right.
be involved in
I
what
think that's
the cities do. That's
The
probably.
question is whether it should be in the charter or whether maybe the city,
Or is it policy?
I don't have a strong feeling about this, other than other than the point that Chris raised, which is that we shouldn't require them to have motions and routine things after 6 o'clock.
I was gonna state it the other way. I think if it's something that they're gonna vote on that affects, the people, that it should be after 6 p.m. Because right now, and again, I yield to people who attend these, but the workshop meetings they hold in the morning are generally don't address these issues. And that has been the procedure, I believe, that Fort Lauderdale has followed. And so I like the idea of keeping it in the charter, that if you're gonna bring up these ordinances, et cetera, allow people to.
And resolution.
So then maybe we need to amend the first sentence. They should have the first meeting after 6 o'clock on the first and third Tuesdays.
And that, that was one of the issues that I had, because earlier we were discussing, we said, well, we don't have any time, but we do have time. So do we want to make it consistent?
Yes.
Until this change, it had in it the 1:30 in the afternoon. And as I said before, it's all one meeting, so they begin at 1:30. Just for the nomenclature or the convenience or for whatever reason, it's the afternoon session has been called the conference meeting and the evening session has been called the regular meeting, but it's really all one meeting. The only difference is that after 6 is when these motions, ordinances, resolutions can be done. By the way, for the land use purpose, that could be after 5, I suppose. But as I said before, I think it's so that working people can be there.
And the issue that brought this to our attention to start looking at was over the fact when they did that petition on, I think it was the pickleball. And when they did the petition and they wanted to bring it forward to the commission, they were told that the regular meeting was the 1:30 conference meeting, which was a meeting where you couldn't take a vote. So that's where this whole discussion stemmed out of making sure that something like that would be on an evening meeting where a vote could be taken. Am I correct, Chris?
I think you're right, but following what Paul said, we had that discussion, just one meeting. But what we're saying is, you can call it a conference, you can call it anything, but you're not gonna vote on these issues until after 6 p.m. when the public's there. And so I don't think we have to change the first paragraph. We just have to keep, the vote will take place.
I will tell you that this is very unusual. I mean, if most most commissions, that the idea of having a portion of a meeting where they can't take any action. Most commissions would call that, they have a workshop meeting.
Right.
Like, they have a workshop meeting, but before the regular meeting, but it's usually not even on the day of the regular meeting. They have one and they have long discussions about all sorts of stuff. And then, but this whole idea of having a meeting where you can't have a motion. I mean, what are they doing? Just talking, chit chat.
I think
Treat
there
it
is
as
the
a workshop.
opportunity to build consensus on a specific issue so they can bring it to a vote, whether it's that night or they'll tell
But
the
it also
city manager, bring it back.
Or sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's just a presentation to be updated on something going on in the city.
And then
So
the public
in
gets
your
to hear
mind,
it.
in my mind, it is no different than a workshop meeting.
It's a workshop meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Because another thing that could happen is that all the discussion could happen during the 1:30 meeting when people are not there. And then they've already came to consensus and they just quickly vote on it after 6 o'clock.
That doesn't usually happen that way though, typically. They
Again,
discuss something and then they direct the city manager or staff, let's bring that back. Let's, this is what we think, this is how we want it to look. Can you bring it back to us next week? next commission?"
another at the next meeting.
Yeah, they don't
Doesn't-
usually talk about it and then quickly
Oh, I
vote on
see.
it. It doesn't happen that way. I'm not saying there might not be exceptions, but that's definitely not the common way.
It's a workshop.
It's a workshop.
It's what you and I in other cities would say. It's a
So they have
workshop.
a
It's what we
meeting.
would say at the
They have a
county. It's a
meeting,
workshop.
they don't have any motions, they just talk or get a report or get. a
And the public gets to
Public
participate.
meetings, right, and then
It's a workshop,
until after 6 o'clock is when is the action.
right, which is really, in my mind, what a regular
So what do you
meeting
have
should be
here?
about.
So agenda is established by the manager and shall provide for public hearing and motions to be heard at 6 o'clock. At the meeting on the first and third Tuesdays of each month.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I think we were happy with it when we
Okay.
discussed it, but my question is the agenda and backup materials.
Oh,
I would like to put something in that we do have a set time period.
And that's the question, because I totally agree with the way it's been conducted here at the city. That's a policy, actually, a policy decision. So at the county, they initiated now, but 2 weeks out. So 2 weeks before the meeting, you get
Not a full 2 weeks, I'm sorry. It's
10 days.
actually literally came out tonight, so it's the Thursday, at least 1 week before the Tuesday meeting, so math.
That's basically 10 days.
Right.
When they put out the agenda with all the backup, and then you have up to when to make an amendment or supplement that agenda.
Supplementals really would cut
What,
them off.
Thursday and Friday?
Wednesday of the week. The mayor has the prerogative past that if it's something absolutely urgent. But in terms of backup, I mean, additional material can circulate as late as the morning of the meeting. It's hard to make these rules so hard and so consistent that that you're not going to see some shenanigans inevitably, especially if it's something that's a major priority to one elected, but.
Bayes County has, it's called the 3-day rule. It says you can put items on the agenda, but any commissioner, if he doesn't receive I'm not exactly sure, but if he doesn't receive the item and maybe the backup, can remove it from the agenda.
Paul?
You may recall that I gave you a sampling of other municipalities and how they handle the agenda, if you want to go through it there.
Well, I think we just decide whether we want to put a time period on that.
Do we want to incorporate that into the charter,
Well, then that would prevent from what's happening, which has happened.
which has happened?
Yeah,
I mean, and
What do you think?
it's kind
You
of
say that, please give
frustrating.
me an example.
We have the example, you swing the whole thing, you got what, 1,000 pages
Yeah.
a day of?
yeah, this has happened. I know Swimming Pool Hall of Fame, but I've heard of other times, because I know that people have been saying, where is the backup? Where is the backup? And all of a sudden it'll appear, just prior to the meeting, or you get just a little part of the backup. You get the agenda and it's not posted. And quite frankly, there's been a lot of bigger items that I just remember hearing people, howling, well, wait a minute, we're coming in here. How do we know?
So you could do it 2 ways. You could do it that it's got to be provided, period. Or you could do it the way that I would, which is you can provide it at the last minute, but any commissioner who does not receive the information has the ability to pull it off the agenda.
Well, I would say not just the commissioner, because then they said, well, we don't have to give it to the public. All we're doing is going to give it to a commissioner.
So any member of the public can pull it off the
No,
agenda?
but I'm saying that I think that's the flaw.
Okay, so what is okay, let's assume that it's just a hard rule, which says you have to have the stuff.
Yeah, I
3
heard
days-
rules like
3
that, I
days
think are
before
scary.
the meeting. Except by
Well, since you have a meetings on Tuesday, I
But
think,
3 working days before?
yeah, 3 working days before, I think that's,
but usually this is dealt with by a rule or by an ordinance.
More
But-
than also, yeah.
You could also say that this rule can be waived by the unanimous vote. This rule can be waived by 4/5 to give some flexibility if something has to go.
That's how they do walk-on items currently.
Prior management used to contact you if you had something as thorough as that and put it on a conference agenda 2 weeks out so that there would be a public discussion so when it would come back. That hasn't been happening over the last year. So at least 2 items where they did it the weekend before or the day of.
Okay, so the question is whether something needs to go into charter or whether this needs to be a note in our report that we suggest that they adopt an ordinance dealing with this.
I feel very strongly on that issue. And I don't think that's much of an imposition on the city. People,
So what do you
they
want
have
to
it on an agenda and they want to vote, it affects the citizens that they get it
So you want to say?
David?
3 working days before.
Let me just ask David a question. David?
David left. the
Yeah,
auditorium.
side, nope, I'm here.
Okay, quick question. When you put together the agenda package and
Mhm.
items have to be submitted to be considered, how many days before or weeks before does the agenda package have to be submitted to the city? In other words, I believe like on a land use issue, there's a deadline date, cutoff date, that has to be submitted if they want to make the city agenda.
Yeah, I would actually have to double check with the manager's office what their hard deadline is, that an item. I mean, obviously, there's certain items that are rushes that may go through, but I can get that general timeline from the manager's office on that.
And certain items have to be advertised in advance, so they can't be rushed on.
But are you, may are you referring to individual items that get to the city manager for the approval process? Or you're talking about the agenda items to the commission? Because if the latter, typically, the agenda is completed Wednesday and published Wednesday or Thursday before the following Tuesday meeting.
But what
Right,
about
David?
the items that they have to submit to him to be considered? That's a difference.
That's a different.
But I think
Maybe we work towards
the
that.
protection is if it has to be included in the agenda that's distributed on Wednesday, that's the protection that Chris is talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's asking too much, because if that's the policy, let's put it in and make it mandatory. Therefore, they say, well, it's not written anywhere, we don't have to provide this.
So we
What if
it's
there's an
Publication
exception?
of the agenda before the Tuesday meeting.
gotta be,
What if there's an exception?
Well, you can have an exception. I'm just saying as a general rule, you can build in, as Richard said, if
for fist vote.
4/5 vote says, yeah, we want to get it up and get it done.
But by then it may be too late because you're talking about the week before the meeting.
No, what we're saying about, we're saying that the items have to be included in the agenda that's published on Wednesday before the Tuesday meeting. However, if an item is not included in the packet, it could be added, it could be considered by the commission upon a 4/5 vote.
And how, that sounds good, but then how does the public know whether or not whether they should show up at the meeting and something's really gonna be discussed? I mean,
And I would just like to add one thing to this because.
Yeah.
If
Exactly.
your concern, Chris, is related to the backup. Again, because my boss is the mayor this year and we get to be part of the preprint agenda review, which I didn't think it could get any more fun than that. I'm actually sort of surprised at how often, executed contract pages are forthcoming prior to the Tuesday vote, but often not with the agenda item itself, and how many things kind of come in at a more staggered rate. So even though the agenda item, which is functionally a placeholder, is on the published agenda, what you're talking about in terms of being able to review what is being voted on can still be held even if we put that language into the charter. And the other part of it is, I wouldn't want to stop executed contract pages from being added later, especially if they're forthcoming. Otherwise, you're losing weeks when you want to start getting contracts.
But my response to that is if you put the contract with whatever is going to be executed, at least the public knows
Yeah.
what's going on. I mean, the page itself is, once it's executed I don't think is of any real benefit to the public, because the public wants to know about the contract. But if you're saying it's an executed page, then the contract, what's the sense of voting on it? It's already been done.
No, they're saying that the other party has to execute it.
Oh, the other party, yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
but still, I think putting the matter on the contract.
And I think they've done that before, right? Don't you put the contract that's under review
More
goes on the
often,
agenda?
yes, and more often than not, it's executed after approval. So there's no requirement that they executed even by the other side.
Some jurisdictions have a requirement
Yeah.
that it can't go on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's executed by the other party because they don't want monkeying around
So that's
after
your,
the commission votes.
Oh,
No, sometimes
don't tell anybody that's what we do.
because sometimes the contract negotiations are right before the agenda deadline. So it's not practical to get it executed in time. And a lot of times, or sometimes the execution comes back wrong and it has to go back and.
Let's
so-
back up for a second. So are we saying that an item cannot be placed on the agenda unless backup is included in the Wednesday distribution?
I would say it the other way, the city can't, address the matter, can't vote on the matter unless the backup is
I
provided.
know that, but I'm dealing with what Jackie said,
Okay,
which is that let's say it's on the agenda, but without the backup. Public could say, oh, I gotta get down for that. And then it comes to the commission meeting. One of the commissioners says, hey, the backup wasn't provided on Wednesday and the public's gone down there.
We're not gonna listen to
We're
them.
we're not gonna listen to this item.
I just think there's exceptions and you guys are being very rigid about this. That
Well,
concerns me.
again, the problem that we've had is what has partaken in the past versus what's partaking over the last year or so.
Imagine.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add that sometimes it's on Thursday and occasionally it's on Friday for publication.
Correct.
The way-
And
the way it operates
sometimes it's
now.
Wednesday night, sometimes it's Thursday, sometimes it's Friday. So it's been inconsistent as well.
But I think it would be, if it's an important issue and the public, we have hundreds of people coming down. And then at the meeting, they say, oh, sorry, the item wasn't included in the backup, so go home.
well, I think most of the people who are coming down who have a real interest in that would be saying, we wanted to know what the backup is. We want to know more about this.
But they
You're
might
gonna
be
have a vote on
disappointed.
something.
Let's say it's pro or against, they might be disappointed. No,
I
you think it's not?
I think if people feel so moved that you're gonna get 100 people to come to an item, they're gonna wanna know what the backup is.
I agree with you, but they don't want to waste their time. What I'm saying is they don't want to wait, they don't want to come down to the meeting, maybe leave their job, get a babysitter, whatever they have to do. And then the commission said, oh, sorry, we can't hear this item tonight because the backup's
But
not.
that would behoove the city to actually get their,
I
That's
agree,
gonna roll
but it's,
beforehand.
but it could happen, all right?
well, but if people count on that and say, well, we haven't seen the backup, therefore it can't go forward.
I just
That's
feel
under
like
people
we're
gonna know.
trying to, we're trying to make something happen or fix something that maybe happened once. It's not like
Didn't happen
this is an
just once.
epidemic. I've been involved in this for many years. And I know there's been some controversial things with some people regarding some of the projects and stuff, but we're acting like this is a massive problem that goes on all the time. We must fix it.
No, it only seems to happen on very significant, important
Major projects.
issues.
Not every time, Chris, come on.
Not every time, no, you're right, but how many times does the building have to burn down before you say, oh, well, that only happened once. We don't have to worry about,
The
what's gonna
idea
happen
is-
to other buildings. Now, and what's wrong with that, Jackie? What problem do you have by telling
I
our
want to
city
be very
staff? Well,
careful.
let me finish.
Sure.
What problem do you have with having our city staff meet a deadline to provide material? I mean, I don't see it. You build in an exception if it's a very important item. We had 21 inches of rain and now we have to get, authorization to try to do whatever we have to do. Fine.
I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with being black or white.
We're
There's
we're
got to
putting,
be
we're giving an
exceptions.
exception.
There has to be exceptions. Now, what are we gonna do as a committee saying, if it rains, if it hails, if there's a.
No, we're gonna say that items must, in order to be considered by the city commission, items must be included in the packet at least certain number of days
Right,
before the
right,
meeting.
yeah.
In the, however, in the items that were, items where backup wasn't required, wasn't provided, can be considered by the city commission upon a fourth this vote. That's it. Yeah, that's what I would say.
That builds it in.
That builds in.
And that keeps one naysayer from blocking.
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It keeps, so one person can stop it, one commissioner can stop it.
No.
What did you say? I missed that.
Fourth this.
Okay, gotcha. That's totally good. I'm with this.
After what point in the week before?
How many days?
10 days.
10 days?
If the backup is tonight is not provided, commission cannot consider items unless the backup is provided. Full backup is not provided within 3 working days
Three
working
Yeah,
days.
3 working days.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that's consistent with them trying to get it out on
That's
the
good.
Wednesday
Stay with
night.
that.
And
Yeah.
these items have to be submitted at least 10 days to the city manager's office anyhow.
Yeah, but apparently there's been
Oh.
situations where I understand
They
these
have
deals, they
been-
go
yeah.
last minute, you're negotiating, I get it, I understand, I mean, it's all of them, but
Yeah.
I think this is good. I like this.
Otherwise, it would be a forfeit vote,
Otherwise, it's worthless.
For this bill.
you know, for it to be considered. So it would be a vote at the beginning of the meeting, whether.
I think when the item came up, or maybe if they want to be courteous so people can go home, they would say, there's an item on the, there's an item on the agenda that hasn't, the backup was not provided. Do we have a motion to consider the item anyway? If it's
And I
a,
think the public would appreciate
Yeah,
the
they-
fact
then they can
because
go
they
home.
want to be able to see that backup.
Yeah. Question?
Especially at that 1,000-page document.
Is that a forfeit vote on adding it to the, including it in the agenda, or is that a forfeit
Adding it
vote on the
Yeah,
merits?
adding it.
On the merits?
No,
It's gonna be on the
it's
agenda.
in order. It's worth this vote.
For approval?
No. Worth this vote to consider it, I would say.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they can have a full
Oh.
debate, but if they don't get worth this vote to consider it, then you can't, that's the end of it.
So it's gonna be on the agenda, but not necessarily considered.
Well, again, city
They
manager,
can't vote on it. They can't act on it.
right, if the city manager chooses to move forward with an item like that without complete backup and puts it on,
Right.
you would hope that they wouldn't, but if they did, then this is a remedy.
Yeah,
that
you can
we
wait 2
have.
weeks and.
So it's,
get the backup
so it's
to-
2 steps. Are we voting to waive the 3-day backup requirement in Dade County, it's called the 3-day rule. And then if it's yes, then it's just a majority vote or whatever type of normal vote it would take to approve the item. I think that's good.
But I like the 4 things, yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, good. So Paul can write it up and we'll come look at it next week. or
Well,
next time.
we have to decide what we're going to do with most of the language we have. Question is whether we don't have a quick meeting next week to review what he's doing. And also what I would suggest at that time is to review a draft report in the city commission, so we can look at the report, approve the report, and approve the final language of Paul's draft. Okay, let's keep going. Do we vote on 313?
Yeah, let's have the motion and the second,
Yeah, let's,
with the amended language.
I will move for second paragraph that we include a requirement for the city manager to include backup on all of the agenda items at least 3 working days prior to the regular city commission meeting, with the exception of the city commission on a forfeits vote, can act on some agenda item without backup provided within the 3 days.
do you want to use without backup or without the adequate time frame of the backup?
Without backup, submitted within the 3 days.
Okay, because I mean, what if they submitted, I don't even want them voting on stuff if there's no backup, and that's kind of what I thought you just said.
No, I said backup of an agenda item had been provided for 3 days, but
Okay.
not everything.
But you said-
Three working.
Do we need a modifier on, I'm hesitant to say it, but, okay, so here's my item, here's one piece of paper. I'm turning over the entire City Hall site to Judy Stern. One piece of paper, that's my backup. Not full backup, doesn't really explain it. There's room. I know, Lord, I'm devious. I'm devious. That's why I spend my whole life in that 1% of stuff that never happens. That's what lawyers do, right?
Exactly.
I mean, really, in theory, that's what the conference agenda meetings was supposed to do, that you could go through all of this backup and discussion, and then at a follow-up meeting 2
Why don't we
weeks
say
away,
reasonable
you would have the action, so
Okay,
that
reasonable
you have that.
Yeah. I mean, there could be a discussion about it, but whatever, okay.
Because it's not the little stuff that,
Can't
No,
grind,
it's-
can't grind down
it's-
that.
we're talking about the big stuff.
The unsolicited proposal stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
Good? All right.
There's a
So-
motion on the floor. Chris,
And I will second it. And
You have the correct language
Paul's
from
got it.
Chris.
I got it.
okay.
Yeah, you can massage it to make it look good.
Harrison, second. All in favor?
405 was the item dealing with the city manager where I was, where I was outvoted. Make him a permanent resident, but we just added the language there. So I move that we approve this, we've debated it forever.
I second it.
It's ridiculous.
Second, all in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
I,
Okay. I'm gonna put it on vote.
I am too.
Wait, do you wanna write this?
I am too gonna vote no. I didn't vote. I'm sorry. I don't do it.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's fine. We decided. I'm not gonna argue it. We just, I don't
No,
think it's right.
I know.
Okay. All right. So then the next, very good. Got through that. That was great. All right. So now I think we should skip to 8. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you?
Wait a sec. 313.
Do we not do?
The meeting.
We did.
That's all done.
Here we do.
So let me ask you a question on the meeting. You don't really have a designated meeting place right now.
That's why we're not.
Yeah,
putting it in
yeah,
there.
so, yeah, I mean, how can we, but, or,
So,
That's all, shouldn't be there. Because they should be able to meet wherever they decide. It's got, under the sunshine law, it's gotta be open to the public, it's gotta be advertised, so if they decide to move their meetings around, their place for a different district, okay. Okay, so the question is this, is that. So those are the items that deal with the sort of the elections, it deals with the swearing in, it deals with a lot of that stuff. The next section under 8 deals with these discussions that we have regarding the very important issue that was identified dealing with property. So do you feel like what we've done is enough to put on the ballot, or you feel like you want to, that there's room politically, I'm not gonna say politically, but Judy, you said only certain items could be considered. You feel like there's emotional room on the ballot to consider these property items?
I think that from the voters that will be turning out, that there's a priority in their minds about what needs to be done about the public lands.
Yeah. All right.
And
So
More
then
than the
just-
second.
Okay, so let's see if we can get through these items.
Okay.
And then, so Paul,
Okay.
you're up. This is a pretty much a total redo, the way we did redo.
This is from a discussion around July.
Yeah, we redid a lot of this.
A lot of-
Yeah.
Some of it, you'll see, some of it, I use my discretion in proposing things. Get your
Well,
diet.
let's walk through what I'm talking about. Okay, let me ask, there's several issues here. There's 2 issues as part of number 8, the III. One issue is initiative and referendum. The other issue is the property. Do you feel like there's an appetite for both of them, or or you want to deal with the property and only, and leave the referendum to another day, or you want to try to do things there's room in the emotional ballot? You know.
I think the emotional ballot, the public lands is really a top priority.
So do you want to skip the initiative and referendum and thinking it's too much for at one bite, or you want to try to include it?
well, I'd like to include, you know,
I guess
I think
the
citizen
commission-
initiatives is an item that I think people.
The commission also is going to have the final decision.
Yeah, they're not gonna say
And all this stuff.
That's up to them. I mean,
No, I understand.
I don't take any offense. We have done our job, and if they don't want to put it on there.
Exactly. But give it to them and see what they want to do.
Okay, so you want to do both. Okay, so let's do the initiative right there.
So actually on the initiative referendum, I only have 2 things that have changed since last.
It's page, it looks like. It says 2 of 6. Says 2 of 6. But let's go through everything that we did, Paul, because this is, we did a lot of work.
Great, you know,
Yeah, plus I had a preview for these guys.
well, I'm not really sure where to begin, but if you are okay with most of it.
Okay, so what are the changes since last time we talked?
3.15 G2.
G. 2.
Romanet 2.
Romanet.
So it allows the committee to elect the referendum vote earlier than the next regular municipal election, either in conjunction with an earlier available Broward County election or by mail ballot, provided that the committee prepays the cost of the vote that is earlier than the city's next regular municipal.
So you, this
Either way.
goes to the point that you raised at the beginning of the meeting, which is, I think $600,000.
They're gonna happen.
A lot of money, but if it's a hugely funded thing,
Correct, I agree with you.
then somebody wants to pay, let them pay. I don't.
Correct.
You okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine. Is that all right with
I
everybody?
think we agree with that, yeah.
Okay, good.
And also, I took the liberty of inserting prepay.
I like that.
Do you want that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Prepay is good.
All right,
Auto pay is also good.
315A1.
And by the way, I think David was more focused on what the cost was, not so much about this.
It's fine.
But if anyone who wanted to challenge us about the charter review being done by mail-in ballot versus waiting till November.
All right. What's next?
So for this, I think it's perfect to live here.
Oh, what's next?
What I have here, 315A1, I think that's Romanet 1.
315A, Romanet 1.
Initiative.
We deleted recall of elected officials because recall is uniform statewide.
Where do I see it?
I don't see it.
You don't.
Well, that's clean. We
It's
gotta flip a couple pages.
Oh, you just
It-
eliminated.
I just
We gotta do it. So this is on where, oh, come on. Okay. Where am I looking for? What page?
That had been on page 2 of 6.
Okay.
That was in the first paragraph A, Romanet 1. We had inserted that. Remember the mayor was here and
Yeah.
he asked that it be inserted. And we discussed it at the last meeting, recall of,
Right, he didn't understand, he thought that we were talking about recalling, which had nothing to do with it.
it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessary because recall is uniform statewide by statute.
Okay, so
Okay, that was it, actually on 3.15 from the last meeting.
Great. I'm fine and I think this is a move to. Yeah.
I think this is a lot, a lot better and cleaner. It's good. Okay, so move it. Somebody move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, so now we're on page.
101, 801.
I didn't know if Judy said aye or you.
No, I said aye.
Oh, okay.
And that's Jack.
Okay, now we're dealing with all the property.
Well,
Explain like.
Pictures. I think we're doing good though. Let's keep going.
All right, so progress is gonna take some explaining. Well, the first one is easy because, actually, Richard, I think this was your suggestion at that, during that discussion to simplify it. Personal property belonging to the city shall not be sold except as provided by ordinance, right?
That's personal property. So they've set up a whole procedure.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay, all right, next.
Well, go down.
Is that all there is? Yeah. Somebody move it. I'll move it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Next.
802.
0.02.
Right, 2 of 3, right, the recommendation.
Sale of property to public bodies. This is where the public purpose comes in.
Where are we looking?
103,
One of
802.
Exhibit
K.
K.
803.
Okay, what page, and what page?
Exhibit
Sorry.
K.
Yeah,
That's what it says.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything underlined
Page
or.
2 and 3.
Yeah, you do on the bottom.
The next page has the.
Okay, so right, so we're under recommendation, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Recommendation.
City,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
You'll see. I'm going to direct your attention to where it discusses public purpose in the first paragraph, toward the end of the first paragraph. So from the case law, I clarified that there must be a paramount public purpose. And I defined that as an activity that is essential to the health, morals, protection, or welfare of the city as determined by the city commission, or for use predominantly for educational, literary, scientific, or charitable purposes. And so that's kind of like an amalgam of some case law that I put together for both. And also some of that case law was related to tax exemptions. So I kind of amalgamated it all into a public purpose for sale of property to public bodies.
Paul, the only suggestion I had on this one, which I didn't have a chance to call you about, was I think it should be clear because it says city commission. I think it should be very, since we could be selling to another city. I think here one should say it's the Fort Lauderdale City Commission that makes the determination. Because somebody could argue that, oh, the Hallandale City Commission says it's a public purpose, so that's enough. So.
Fair enough. Good point, thank you. Okay, also, you'll see that I added at the beginning, subject to the provisions of 8.04 and 8.09, which I'll get into, but those provide the thresholds.
Okay.
For the type of vote that's necessary for either
Right.
based on value or
Where we ended up
size.
with that sliding scale.
So I added that also to sale of land to public bodies.
Yeah.
Again, I did that by myself. I don't know if you want that.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. So,
So let's move on to 8.02, right?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
and that's with adding Fort Lauderdale State Commission. Okay. 8.04. This is where I took some liberties. So.
Just before we move on, minutia, but in 8.02, is there a reason that we don't say municipalities, because technically they are not subdivisions in the state? I mean, we have other public bodies. I'm just not sure why we don't specify municipalities.
That's a
Says
really,
any other public body, doesn't it?
It does, and again, minutia, but
Because it just, because
No,
I
it's a
think
great-
that includes,
great point.
that could include like, well, we have the word districts, right?
right,
But the word districts is here.
though the word, Joni Armstrong coffee in my head is reminding me that municipalities are voluntary associations, whereas counties are subdivisions of the state. And yet the fact that municipalities aren't the subdivisions of the state.
That's a great point, and if I may address it. No, that's a really good point. However, in the statutes, municipalities are sometimes included within subdivisions, and sometimes they're considered, and otherwise they're not. And if you look at section 1 of the statutes, the definitions, you will see that I believe it uses the word cities are within the definition of political subdivisions, oddly enough. Because I agree with you, sometimes they're not. And I'm gonna pull it up right now. In chapter 1, political subdivision, here, the words public body, body politic, or political subdivision include counties, cities, towns, villages, special tax school districts, special road and bridge districts, and all other districts in the state. So, good point. And I grew up thinking that municipalities were not subdivisions, but then you have this definition that includes cities under political subdivision.
In which case I withdraw
So-
my statement.
It's kind of, now, again, this is in quotes specifically political subdivision, which is a little different from just subdivision. Or, I don't know if that makes, well, no, because it says the state of Florida or any of its subdivisions. You want to say?
I'm okay with it. though.
But you were putting the word municipality. So what? Let's add it, yeah.
I make the motion to reconsider 802.
Trying to make Harrison
stay. You have.
So wait a second, since we previously voted and approved it, so we need to vacate that.
Or at least motion to reconsider 802 to include the addition of the word municipalities.
Can I add one thing? though? It's very unlikely that one municipality would sell land that it owns to a different municipality. Not unheard of.
If it's on the border and they were de-annexing it, I mean, I see your point, but
So let's add the word, not word.
Just a word.
We could spend 30 minutes talking about this.
So.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, so
Motion to-
motion to reconsider it to. For the motion to amend. What is it? Which one's necessary?
You know, we're gonna come back at our next meeting. We're gonna have a full package, including the report and all of this language. We can just.
Well, we can just do it now, be done.
Okay, fine. Perfect. Let's do it. Move to amend the resolution, the motion previously adopted to add the word municipalities.
Seconded.
All in favor?
I have a question. What is the legal definition of paramount? Public
Paramount.
purpose.
So that comes from a case, it was in Hillsborough County, Poe versus, I don't know, some sports authority.
Okay, so there's case law to
There's
support
case law
that.
that talks-
That's what he was saying at the beginning.
Let me just add, and it's a good question too, because paramount as opposed to an incidental benefit to private. So at one point I had that distinction and I was kind of directed to get that out of there, the incidental benefit to private. And so that's why I left paramount public purpose. That has to be the main, as opposed to something that might benefit private
No,
concern.
and that's why, you know, as long as there's case law, so that's good.
Yeah.
Because it is, I could determine paramount one way and Jim could determine it another way, but as long as there's a clear legal.
No, you still can, but.
What do we say?
Lawyers that argue case law.
But that does come
There's
from,
also Paramount Plus. $4.99 a month to watch.
Is there anything good on it? Okay, section 8.04.
That's all.
yeah, Devin was just on me a different place, I think that was okay, so.
Yeah, there's multiple cases with it, but it's about case law that defines.
By the way, Devin Carter, who's a CPA in the finance department, is finishing law school and is gonna be helping out with us for a little bit.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
We have a council coming against.
Maybe. All right, what are we on?
8.04.
8.04. For
Individual liberties.
L, this is where I took some liberties because. So I added thresholds for approval of sale of real property to private parties. I don't know, and I'm sorry, we probably should have had available the list of properties that the city has. Was that handed out?
Yes, Anthony had given that to us way back
Yeah.
when.
So kind of judging from that list is where I kind of made up these thresholds for your consideration for approval of sale of real property to private parties. So again, randomly, I made any property exceeding 1.5, what is that, 1.5 million square feet in area or exceeding.
No. 1.5 million square feet, that's very large.
It is large, and there are some large ones. Or exceeding $5 million in value would require a resolution adopted by unanimous vote.
Okay.
With a finding that the sale would be in the city's best interest. I kind of wish Anthony were here because
And I was going
he and I
to,
met
Yeah.
about this also.
and we never had we never had another meeting to discuss with all the properties that Anthony, he was kind enough to run it, but we never had the meeting to discuss it further. And maybe this is an item that we need to put on hold until we have Anthony, it could be part of our working group for the,
Well, Anthony
go ahead.
also, we got the list from the risk manager.
right, but it doesn't have to be something that we do for this particular ballot, but something we can keep working on.
You'll notice that at the beginning, I prefaced it and so hold this thought, I preface the except as provided in section 8.21, and that's related to property zone park. So, and I'll explain why I accepted that out from 8.04. So my next tier is,
Well, I just would say when you are drafting, I would flip all these around. I would start with the smallest one. You know, I would start with the smallest category. And then go to the larger.
okay,
Just flip around, because I was looking to say, wow, that's a big restriction, but I would start with the smaller category, and say if the property's under this, go to that, then go to the next one. There are just two levels that you do. There's two, right?
yes.
So if it's under 1,000 square feet or under $1,000 in value,
Well, it didn't need to
a
be
million square
addressed.
feet.
It didn't need to be addressed. Anything below a million didn't need, or a million in value, didn't need to be addressed here because it would be
The regular vote,
a majority vote, yeah.
$1,000 in value is really no limitation.
I get 1 million square feet is 22.95 acres. That's a huge.
But it's gonna be, can't be worth, it's gonna be, it's a
Yeah,
$1,000.
I'm saying, yeah, you never, yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't deal with the size of it, maybe we just deal with the value, maybe under $1,000, that's nothing.
Yeah,
What
no,
was the purpose of that?
No.
Size, what's,
So
well, that's 100,000.
it's gonna be driven.
It's actually $1 million.
Yeah.
A million, yeah, what I'm saying, yeah.
So anything under a million would be a regular vote. But anything exceeding 1 million square feet or exceeding 1 million in value, it would be a 4/5 majority with the finding that the sale would be in city's best interest.
I gotta tell you, I have no feeling as to whether these are the right numbers.
Do you want me to see if I can find that list? I don't.
Do you have a feel for it?
I would rather wait till we have Anthony sitting here and go through. Let him identify as to what kind of parcels we've been talking about. Which is what he had prepared the original.
What are we
document
doing?
for.
It's 20-something acres.
These are actually, I can remember in the numbers.
Yeah,
Right.
but what Richard's just saying is you're never gonna get to it because of the value. You're never gonna find any place that's 22 acres.
Correct.
But it's $1
You know,
million,
better than
not
anybody else.
1,000, it's $1 million.
Well, don't forget parks.
Well, no, the parks are different, yeah, that's.
I don't even think Holiday Park's 22.
Right, parks are different.
Yeah, parks are different, they do. So why don't we just keep this one to?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so at the next meeting, which I think should be honestly next week, to give the city commission time, you know.
But Richard, what our directive will be is the top priorities of those that we need on the November ballot versus those items that we can continue discussing.
I know, but this, but you said this is an item you want the ballot, right?
Yeah, I think.
The,
I thought you said.
Because
you
it's
wanted
a
it-
combination of all.
for the sale, the actual sale versus the lease. I mean, the next
Oh,
item of,
I see what you're saying. One thing is sale of property, they're having, that's not so critical. It's where they're leasing.
Leasing. with
Oh,
the
license.
so why don't we
omitted the
just,
word
why don't we just for
licensing,
this,
and we
for
need to
this,
close the.
why don't we for this, back, just deal with that issue?
Correct.
And put off this other issue
Correct.
dealing with this, let's do, so where is that, Paul?
8.09.
Yeah, 8.09. When they're leasing, when they're giving licensing agreements by circumventing the charter, because the charter.
Cities hereby.
For licensing away property for 100 years,
City is here.
or licensing away the park for $1 a year.
The city's hereby
Way up the
empowered to
value of the
lease
property.
to, did we already approve this language, Paul?
No, you haven't. This is what I worked on over the summer after you discussed it in that July.
Right, okay, so the city is empowered to lease to, or enter into license agreements, concession agreements, facility use agreements, other types of use agreements with private parties for the non-public use of any improved or unimproved real property, including airspace over such property, owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale and not needed for city purposes for a period of not more than 50 years, including any renewals and extensions. Plus such lengths of time not to exceed 5 years as determined by the city commission may reasonably estimate to complete construction of the improvements proposed to the property.
Where, 9, I don't think it's the right section we're talking about.
8.09.
No, well, this is the one, where they're,
Unless this is rewritten
this
already.
is totally rewritten.
You know, what they've done is adding. licenses.
We've broadened
I
it.
just want to make sure, okay, so this is the correct new language.
Right, on page 4 of 5.
I
that's
have
the-
that in front of me.
4 of 5?
Exhibit 9.
Yeah, exhibit M 4 of 5 has the clean version starting in the month. I was reading the underline, it was actually recorded. in the font.
I just wanted to make sure that,
Oh.
okay.
My first reaction to this is, I'm more concerned about the words non-public use. It should be for any facility
Correct. That's what threw me when I saw.
or a real property.
Well, this is as opposed to what we just did.
That's, but you could have, you could be leasing to I could argue that I'm leasing to me or, and it's gonna be a public use. I'm gonna open up a amusement park for the public. So therefore it is, you're saying for non-public use of any improved property. What is non-public use?
Profit. So if you're opening an amusement park, that would be.
Well, we should say what non-public use is confusing.
What they've been doing is incorporate into these licensing agreements that they're going to give a portion of it for the public use when they can't finance to get the deal done. So I just don't want that loophole
I
out
think
there.
it should be for any purpose. I think if they're
I agree
leasing
with you, it should be.
or concessioning or licensing to any private party, whatever their use is, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
And
that's fine. That was
I
existing.
think this non-public use is troublesome because I think there could be a debate about what's,
It's public.
somebody says, oh, this is a public use, it's a, you know.
We just heard that. We heard that repeatedly. Yes, Bill.
I like what you said for public purposes, but how does a vacation, when they vacate, say a developer wants 2 public streets? Once they vacate, that's property's gone. It's not a sale or
This is only dealing
I
with
know.
houses.
But now the public has lost that public purpose of that property that they currently own, which is the same as selling or leasing property. Even though vacating is a different title, but you see where I'm kind of asking?
Yeah, you're saying that when the city, if I own 2 pieces of property with a little alley in between. And I come to the city to vacate the
Or
alley.
a street.
Or a street to vacate a street, right? Then the city is basically giving me that property, right?
So should vacation, property being vacated be included?
I
in
don't
this
think it's,
section?
I think this is a section where it's basically use of some sort of a use agreement. I think that maybe we should include it in the section where there's selling or abandoning public property.
Right, that's different section.
Right, what do you think?
Yeah, sale of vacation.
If something's
Right,
vacated,
that's under sale.
closer to
Because
us.
I think that's an issue with the public as well.
Yeah,
vacating
but
property.
that's under the sale.
I haven't touched it too much. Isn't that a statute?
Vacating? Yes,
I think
but it
there
has
are-
to be approved, it's approved by the city commission. I
I think
believe
there are criteria in the
there
statute.
could be, but anyway, we'll deal with it.
Yeah,
This
but
is
we
ju-
reserved for
we're just-
next time anyway, the sale, and vacation would be into the sale.
Okay, so I can get rid of, the, for non-public use and just make it general. Any improved or unimproved, okay, so let me explain. So leases, license agreements, facility use agreements, or other types of agreements with private parties. Including airspace, are limited to not more than 50 years. And those 50 years include any renewals or extensions.
What is this plus the length of time for construction? Where did that come from?
That was existing.
Let's take it out.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't even know what it means. I mean, I know what it means, but let's just say that they're limited to 50 years. That's.
Did we also put in it about the requirement of the supermajority?
I don't know if we're there yet. Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Here we have
Yeah.
Okay, so it's gonna say for a period of not more than 50 years, including any renewals or extensions. As determined by the city commission, take out all that language. Except that the approval of any such lease has duration exceeding 25 years
Okay, that was a random number that I put in.
may be pursuant to a resolution adopted by the affirmative vote for this. So Paul drew the line, if it's under 25 years, then it's just a majority vote, but we can change it. We can
Right.
say under 10 years,
That
under
was my
5 years.
random
We can
suggestion.
say anything we want.
Yeah, I don't think we need to put,
Well, what do you want to say?
we need to say a timeline.
No one's gonna really do.
Well, the
it.
question is, do you want a line where, do you want a line?
Supermajority.
Currently, it's,
What about the little concessionaire that has a?
so currently it was unanimous vote. And we reduced it from unanimous vote on lease agreements to a supermajority vote.
Rose it unanimously, that prior charter.
Prior charter on lease agreements of the land were required to have unanimous vote. Which is why we found from working with the attorney's office, why they would start doing these licensing agreements versus leases, because licensing only required a majority vote.
So they were getting, that's why they were getting around.
That's how they were getting around having to get the
Okay,
unanimous.
so now that we've included
So
all
we now
these,
switched it to
we've
supermajority,
said
no matter
all in
what.
one basket, everything's in one basket, everything
Right.
we all can think of to call it, we've called it to one basket. Do we want any of those approved by just simple majority vote? Or do we want all of them to require a,
I think we need to have a supermajority vote for all. I don't think we need to put in 5, 10, 15, 25, whatever.
That's,
I don't have a strong feeling about that. Okay, so all of them are gonna require, you take out this 25-year language. All of them require forfeits vote. City commission, finding a fine on the fair market appraisal of the property, such property would be economically feasible. What does that mean? It's economically feasible. What is that?
it makes sense to the city. That's the way I thought. It interpreted it.
I think if it's a forfeit vote, you put a period after that.
I think that came from your discussion.
Well, I think part of that,
You direct-
See, that's not the
You are
dollar.
correct.
that, yeah,
That
because
gets
of
over
the dollar,
the
amount,
dollar.
where they were
consideration.
giving away, they're giving away by a licensing agreement, land, acres and acres of land for $1 a year.
Yeah, I have to have
which-
some faith in these elected officials, and 4/5 of the commission thinks it's the
Yeah,
right
but
thing to do.
Gave away $1 a year. How do you give away acres
How
and
did four
acres and acres?
out of 5 commissioners vote for that? That's all I need to know that happened.
Yeah.
Yes, Mayor.
I just want to say, the council has done this whole, now that is a little different than this, but P3 study. And came to the commission the last meeting, and not this one, it was just, this week. And asked that, one of the things that the council recommended, the committee recommended, was that if it has anything to do with parkland and to be used by, police like that, that it be all of them, all 5 have to vote for it.
Actually,
And if somebody can't be absent,
we'll
if
get
somebody's
to,
absent, it doesn't count. That's what
we'll
we
get
asked
to
anyway.
8.21, but I went one step further and I made certain parkland subject to, because this was based on your discussion, sale of certain parkland subject to referendum. I went even one step further. So we'll get there in a
Okay,
minute.
let's do a
Okay.
piece at a time.
Sorry.
Do we need? Are we comfortable just saying forfeit vote? Putting a period after, or do we feel like we need some economic viability by,
No,
That can,
well, that dollar still fixing my problem.
That's the thing that sticks in my craw, that they have to, in order to do these agreements, there has to be a fair market value upon the property. I mean, how do we continue ever giving away land at $1 a year? That's
For 50 years, yeah.
Yeah, for 50 years.
I mean, I agree with that, but a lot of those, couple of those situations, the people were putting in millions to get it done. I'm not advocating anything, but,
Need to bring that.
you know,
Also over 50
they're
years.
improving it.
But they're over. for
No, their
150, yeah.
improvement only goes with them. It doesn't stay for the community's use.
Well, let me also add that during the 50 years, economic feasibility could change.
Very much so.
I don't know what economic feasibility is, honestly.
That came from you folks.
I still don't know what it means.
Well, it's definitely not
Even though I made a
fair market
statement,
It's
it
not
value.
fair market value, so I don't.
doesn't mean economic feasibility.
No, I understand it, but I thought the discussion was, the
Fair
city was
market
going to
value.
get a fair market value return.
And again, how do you know what it'll be
And
like?
then
in
that
40 years?
becomes very debatable.
No,
Well, there's are actuary studies that
Yeah.
get comprised, but at the bottom line, it's something that we don't want to be giving away land to get $1 a year for 50 years.
And all kinds of other rights that go with it, right?
Right.
Signage,
Air rights.
air rights, yeah, it's ridiculous.
May I open another can of worms?
No, can we just stay with this? Until we
What
resolve
flavor
this.
is this can?
Until we resolve this can first.
Well, is Pat Riley on here?
Pat?
Yes? Yes?
When the order looks at these proposals that come in, what
Yes.
is your take on giving away government land by a lease agreement, whatever? How do you justify your economic review of it? Is it a fair market value or what's it that you do?
Well, I mean, there's, when you say the line, like $1 a year, that used to really bother me, but I've had so many debates with people saying that, that sounds bad, but if you look at other things like Bahia Mar was a big discussion about what is that bringing? Property tax increase to the city, jobs for the city. So you kind of like counter some of that stuff, but again, too, you have to look at is that the best use of that land is kind of what I kind of look at too. There was another one just recently, a P3 for the water taxi set up that was recently approved a couple meetings ago. Again, that's a public use, and again, is that the best use for that property? But then, again, they're saying that's going to bring people, it's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring income to the city, it's going to bring higher property taxes for the city. So you kind of counter some of that stuff against $1 a year, because we have a lot of those $1 a year kind of contracts. But you have to kind of look at the whole picture on that.
They have to have a financially feasible business plan involved and
Right.
Are we, well, okay. So when I think about financial feasibility, I don't think about it from the city side. When I think about a business, having some sort of a business plan and being financially viable, so that you're not leasing to somebody who doesn't have the ability to carry out whatever they're saying. That's the way I think of it. From
that's a 100-year
business.
license.
I think about that from the business side. So are we talking about analyzing the proposed lessee's business plan to determine that their business plan is viable? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about the value of the lease to the city so it gets fair market value for the lease? Which one are you talking about?
Both.
Okay,
I mean, really,
okay, that's fine.
if you're gonna tie a property for 50 years,
Or 100 years. Here you have property tied up for 100
All right,
years.
so
that
there
can't be
needs to,
built.
okay, so it's both sides. So it needs to be number one, that the lessee is paying fair market value for the lease, one,
Or license.
or whatever we call it. And number two is that the lessee, that the city believes that the lessee has a business plan, an economically viable business plan for operation of the property. Two separate things. Yeah?
Something that always has concerned me is when they also do these leases, they don't negotiate it where the person doesn't have the ability to sell the lease to another entity. if we're gonna do this, any type of lease, I would like to keep it so they're not allowed to flip it to somebody else. So the agreement is with the person
That
that
would
we
be,
do the deal with.
that would be in the license agreement. That it's not assigned.
But it's not being dealt with, is what I'm trying to say. So I wish that we could somehow put some type of language in there.
Because that would solve the issue of someone just getting the,
Doing it and then flipping. the
flipping it,
property.
yeah, and not having the resources to even build whatever they.
You know.
You get the rights and then you sell the rights and you make a profit. The city's still in the same situation
Sure.
with the original.
Well,
owner.
it's in the city.
It would still have to be in the agreement because in Florida, agreements are assignable unless they say they're not.
Right,
Right,
so there's no way to
so
put
even-
anything,
Yeah.
But if we put something in the charter that says
Not
that the
some-
agreements, these agreements shall provide that they're not assignable without the approval of the city commission.
Without approval, yeah.
Well, also, as I'm thinking about it,
But that would be the same four-fifths of the supermajority of whatever we're
Right.
talking about. Yeah.
well, I'm also thinking that
We write this in.
so the leases aren't
we
assignable.
give them 1 second.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna chair, Jim wants to say something.
Definition of fair market value, could that be negotiated?
That's a whole other
We
can
have,
of worms.
we have, I know at the county you have to get what, 3 different appraisals.
Yeah, presence.
Do we have that here?
I don't think that's in the
Yeah.
charter. I think there's just policy.
There's a statute
It's a
on
state
it.
law.
There's a statute on that. That came up recently.
The kid's coming up with,
And
the
Bridget?
Bell Harbor situation.
There's a statute on that. It's in 166.
I think, yeah, there is something about disposing of property in 66.
And selling it over fair market value. There are certain steps you have to go through.
They
in
can't spend
appraisals.
more than 500 something.
There's a,
I think fair market value has to be
there's a
established.
threshold. I can find it if you want. but
Well, before I forget it, I think we should have a defined term that, so that you know, it should be the power to enter into license agreements, construction, facility agreements, those types of agreements with private, and we should call that each or collect, each is a, and you can call it a facility agreement, each is something, so that when you're referring to it later on, you can say
Such facility.
such, yeah.
Something else that we discussed.
Facility agreement, facility.
Something, whatever you call it.
Yes, last time we discussed the issue of back-to-back licenses and leases. And I think we agreed as a the body that at the end of whatever that 50-year lease is, it has to go back to competitive. They do not have any,
Well, there's no requirement that any of these things be done competitively to begin with.
well, I know, but what they do is they,
I know that, but what I'm saying is that if you want to competitive,
well, not competitive, but put it back up.
if you want
rather
some
than-
sort of a process
Yes.
for a renewal, then there should be a process for the initial one.
Well, in response to that,
So you're-
that's built in because the 50 years include any renewals or extensions.
No, but
So-
How does the renewal work though? What
what
happens
he's
to
saying
the
is that the
numbers?
renewal should be, that there should be some process governing how a renewal is done. And I'm going back and saying, well, if there's a process for how renewals are done, there should be a process for how the initial license agreement is.
Well, I think that's what we were talking about, that it had to be, you know, fair market value, had to be someone.
But
who
that's,
was-
but that's not a process.
You can't use that term because it's too like out there. You gotta say specifically, in my opinion,
But
how we determine fair market value.
How
You
do
really
they
do.
do it down
By a
in
number,
Miami?
both entities have to get 2 or 3 appraisals.
You've done that in Miami.
I don't know.
You can't just say
When you
fair
did the
market
arena
value.
site.
Honestly,
you've done-
Honestly, the way it's done is that basically it's a negotiation between the county and the city and they basically say, okay, this is a good deal. Like, you know, we're negotiating something now for a former city hall site. And it's just whatever the county, you know, the commissioner of the council feels like is a good deal for this. It doesn't even say it, you know, but the concept is that they're not gonna vote for it unless they think it's a good deal for the city. That's basically it.
Don't you think it would be good if we put in there that, excuse us, so that the, both parties, the city, the citizens get to see, there's actually appraisals that are done on both sides and they see this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the thing you're eliminating,
Specific.
the thing you're eliminating though is that they're intangibles. Let's assume for a moment that city commission decides that they should have some concession on the Bay Walk for ISIS. And because they think that will attract tourists downtown and stuff like that, and the commission says, you know what? We're gonna give them a very good deal, not an economic, not a market deal, but a good deal, because we want to have 3 or 4 concessions on the Bay Walk, because that's really good for tourists. So the thing is, these city commissions have considerations other than just money. They want to spur development in downtown. They want to, you know, there's all sorts of things that are beyond just numbers.
I agree with you, but when you look at something that's gonna be a renewed lease on some gigantic parcel,
I'm talking about take the first one to begin with.
okay, the first one, yes, but this, okay,
You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna have a process for the renewal, then you need to have a
Process for the
process for
initial.
the initial one.
Well,
I was just gonna add that our procurement code addresses revenue contracts also. So it's not just purchasing goods and services. But it also addresses, there may be a competitive selection requirement for certain types of leases because of it being a revenue contract. Now,
It's a revenue
but
contract.
where the city makes money. So the city is leasing in exchange for getting
I'm so
rent.
concerned about the concept, like, let's assume that the city decides that they really need more parking by the Broward County auditorium, performing arts center.
anything you want.
They decide, right? And they say, you know what? We need to make sure that there's parking because that brings people downtown, supports the local merchants and all that. And so we're gonna do a below market deal with them because we want to encourage a particular type of development. I mean, cities all over the country are basically giving tax breaks to stores and other places to encourage development down. We want to encourage people to be, you know, to invest in our downtown area. So we're gonna get somebody to put up parking at below, they're gonna pay us less than market. I mean, there's so many. And that's why I sort of feel like a forfeit vote is the best you can do, you know, but you feel strongly the other way, so I understand. But I just don't know
Well, I
that you
think
really
that-
want to tie the city commission's hands so much to like a market deal, because there's other considerations.
again, I think because of issues that we have seen more currently than past, it raises it to what needs to be fixed, because in the past, we were saying it's happening, it's working, the incentives are there. And more recently, we've seen a different trend. So how do we protect us going in the future from these trends that we've been watching? Between the P3 projects, between giving away the public land for $1 a year, I mean, these are all
And
things.
you don't think that if this vote gives protection, not one commissioner, it's gonna, there's not 2 commissioners that are gonna stand up and say it's not a good deal. You don't think that protects?
Well, we've seen it. I think the only way around it is a unanimous vote, but,
Yeah, going back to that, but
you know,
we're trying to work together. So we took from just a majority vote to a supermajority vote with the licensing. And we're reducing the requirements of the leases, which were unanimous now, down to supermajority.
And this goes right into the point that when you ask the auditor, hearing from the public and people around my homeowners association, they ask, why does the city just accept the actuaries of the developer or the person proposing? Versus.
You don't mean the actuary, you mean the
Appraisals.
appraisals.
But we have,
I'm not talking about appraisal, I'm talking about in lieu of for income that's going to happen. Like, let's say take the PMR project, but to sell those condos, year 2, this amount's going to come in. Year 3, this amount's going to come in. That's what they're projecting, the developer. But did the city ever have that?
They do.
They just look at it and say, to the auditor's office, yeah, that's okay, or did they go outside and hire a third?
They had another party take a look at it.
Those things are
Yes.
tough, though.
Okay, so so it's mandatory they do a third party.
I don't think it's mandatory, but I know that they've done it. They did it over here more.
Yes, they did.
So my question is, should it be mandatory?
What?
The char-
Well, I think you want to do everything to scrutinize and make sure it's a good deal for the city and it's a good deal for you know, the developer who's putting the risk, especially with the P3, to put it, you know, his effort into it and his money into it first. So, you know, it's a partnership on, at least in the P3s, to get something that's good for both parties. But we really definitely want to scrutinize it. As you remember with the Bahia Mar, there was concern that the revenues weren't going to be good enough. And I remember the outside firm that looked at that, they did cost and revenue projections. And, you know, there was points where it looked like certain years there wasn't going to be revenues to meet some of the expenditures. So, you know, there was a risk of that, but then they added things like, well, we're going to add an aquarium now and so things like that. So they're looking to make sure that the revenue is right to be able to make it a viable project for sure.
So that was
And
the
we-
Swimming Hall of Fame, that was Bahia Mar, and
Yeah.
that was also the one-stop shop. The commission overrode the auditor's recommendation on the one-stop shop.
And I can give a case example of another P3 where it was in the backup pre-agenda meeting that it was only going to be 0.5% of their annual revenue. And the question was brought up to the commissioner, that's low. Well, by the time it got that Tuesday at the commission, it went from 0.5% to 1%. And the concern is, had that not been raised by a member of the general public, it should not have happened the way it happened. And how did they just all of a sudden now come up with one from 0.5% to 1%? Why was that not evaluated by someone of expertise? It wasn't a
Well,
third-
I kind of remember, that sounds like the Snyder Park item. Is that what we were talking about
Yes.
there?
Yes.
Because I do recall that there was talk about that 0.5%, but then there was other concessions about contributing something else for other parks and then how long it would be, and then some other concessions at that time. But I agree that turned out to be a kind of a negotiated point, but it was later changed, which was good when it was saying that, you know, that's not really a whole lot of annual revenue based on what their potential was for having tournaments and so forth in a restaurant and other concessions
The
there.
one-stop shop
So-
is still the mall, and
I think
and
the
Rockford Stadium is.
But was that deal looked at by a third party outside? Yeah, that's my question, like on that particular.
Which one?
Mission on the road.
Well, that was
Mission on the road.
I don't think there was a lot done on that side of it.
And that's a
I
concern.
mean, I know there was a lot of, you know, city departments involved with the whole process. I'm trying to think if we used, there's a firm we use a lot to look at it. I don't recall if we did or not on that one. I'd have to check.
So to Bill's point, he's asking, should there be something in writing in the charter,
It makes
puts
it
that
mandatory.
guardrail of a third, call it non-interested party, neutral party, to do the evaluation besides our own internal resources, or a third party that can make a general assessment?
And,
And that, we haven't answered that. We haven't
And-
answered your question.
well, and you have to remember that the city had that with the one-stop shop, and the commission overrode the auditor's reports and the outside consultant's report.
I remember,
They rejected the outside consultant's report and the order.
right?
And we still have no project because they haven't had the finances to do the
Right.
project
But
and tied up the land for 100 years.
was that required to have that third party? And that's what we're talking about. That's your point is, shouldn't that be in the charter that there is a third party requirement to
You know,
move forward?
what I think is just poor negotiating, quite frankly.
Well,
I
it
really
could be that
didn't. I
too.
mean,
Yeah, but there
why
are
do
no
you have to-
guardrails like.
But there's no
So,
guardrail.
How do you know
I
it's
agree
for
with you, but I
negotiating
mean,
unless you have an
sure.
expert look at it?
Well, and look at.
Well,
the-
who's doing the
to
negotiating?
make-
So who?
Look at the projects. Lockhart Stadium. One-stop shop. We want to add the pickleball. I mean, look where we are today.
Right, and there's gonna be a lot more because development is just getting kickstarted here. All the hungry developers come into here because they know it's easy picking. My opinion.
So going back to the question, Richard, you've had more experience with this in other cities, so that we take and remove the emotional position from what's going on here and compare it to something that's
I
large.
mean, I feel like this is a lack of confidence. And I'm not making a judgment about it. It's a lack of confidence in what the city commission will do. That's what this is. This is a lack, you don't, some group of you don't feel like the elected officials made good decisions about this. And you're looking to ensure that, I mean, I don't know honestly how you can make an elected official.
Be honest with them.
I'm not talking about dishonesty. I'm just saying that different people, and I'm not defending, different people have different views about what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. And I'm sure, because I don't follow Fort Lauderdale politics at all. I'm sure that those commissioners that voted for those items felt, for whatever reason, that that was in the best interest of the city. I mean, that's what they did. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to write into the charter some, Chris, you called them guardrails, to make
Almost like
sure that the
putting
city
ethics and
commission
integrity in the
does
charter.
what we think that they should do.
And that's part of what we're trying to do by saying a license, which was the way they got around on one.
Yeah, I think,
stop shop.
I think we
And
fixed that one
two
issue, which
Yeah,
is they
that's
were,
fine, but
they were
yeah, that's
fooling-
one issue.
they
Now
were-
we have
they
another
were-
issue.
and they were getting around this unanimous vote requirement by calling it something else. I think we've taken care of that. The question is, beyond that, now they need now you need a 4/5 vote to approve, let's say, any of these things. It's now what we're saying is, in addition to the 4/5 vote, I mean, now you want to give this, if you have an appraisal, if you have an evaluation by an expert, or you want to have the commission to be bound by those things? I mean, let's say you have the KPMG come in and they say, this is the worst deal for the city ever. Do you want the city commission to be bound by that? I mean, you want KPMG to be making these decisions?
I agree.
No, I think they just take it under serious consideration would be a way to describe it.
Okay.
They
I don't think we
they
can-
had that exact thing happen
Mhm.
on the one-stop shop, where
Yeah.
they were advised not to do it.
Okay, so
And they
but they still,
overrode the
but they did.
professionals'
But they did it.
recommendation.
And my answer to that would be having no interest and not even knowing what you're talking about. Is if people don't like what the city commission did, then they should get the new city commission.
And I agree with you on the concept of, it's only so much in the Constitution, because that's what this is, versus what should be policy.
Right.
And we're forcing it because of our lack of faith in
Exactly.
what has transpired in
Exactly
the
what's
past.
happening, lack of faith.
And it's driving us to incorporate too much. Where again, my original thoughts were cleaning up the fallacies in the actions, because we've done so much that's been inconsistent with law,
I
that
think,
we don't give them those
I think
opportunities.
if you want to include something, you could say that prior to any vote on something like this, there shall be an independent analysis by, somebody that shall be considered by the commission. That's all you can do. Then, if people want to stand up at the podium and say, listen, your outside people say this is a crummy deal for the city. Then if the commission wants to ignore
So if we do
you can
that-
require that there be a report. But I don't, beyond that, I don't.
No, I agree, and I think that's all we're asking for, is that we put that third-party guardrail in there. And the commission can look at it and laugh and say, goodbye, we don't
Okay,
care.
so-
But we're still, it builds some confidence, I think, in the public domain, in that right now, the public thinks that come and take,
Yes.
We would, because the city will roll over.
Okay, so let's assume just
That's,
with
that's
that,
the
go with
feedback
that for a
we all
second.
get.
So there's two, as we talked about before, there's two sides to that. The first side is are the people paying fair market value? Just gonna use that term. So that's one determination that you can get from yourself. The second determination, which we've discussed, is the business that is getting the license, do they have a commercially viable business? So those are two separate things. So you could require a report on one.
No, we know on both, when
Wait,
it came
what?
to one-stop shop and they still gave it
But
to
you're never
them,
gonna,
so.
I mean, this is the people that have been elected, so they have their own reasons for doing whatever they did, and they felt like it was the best thing to do, so that you can't,
Right, you
so
can't,
get a
you
get
can't
a
put
report on
ethics and
one.
integrity into a charter.
And not
What you can
every
do is just create the.
I'm sure some people
spine of
think
the
it was a good thing to
Constitution.
do.
Correct, like I thought the pickleball thing was horrible, but there's thousands of people that thought that was
Picklers.
great.
They love it.
Exactly, they think, what are you
But like I was
crazy?
saying,
Same thing with
bad
the
deal.
corner.
One-stop shop.
You know, it's
bad
all
deal.
about who you want to get.
So if we
elected.
go forward and we take the spine of the Constitution,
Yeah.
our charter,
Right.
which is our Constitution,
Right.
put in the parameters so that there are some parameters without being as inclusive of it. And just hope that they take that to use as a policy direction where they can create their own
Okay, so I think we
policy. on
have three
some of it.
choices. One choice is to leave it at the 4/5 vote. The second choice is to require that that they have an outside company do and determine that it's a fair market value. The third possibility is that they have to do a fair market value and a viability analysis on the business leasing.
Mhm.
So those are the three choices.
But I don't-
happen.
But there's, what he's saying is that because there's a view that some of these transactions were not maybe the best thing to do, that if there at least was an outside company doing it, the commissioners would at least have authority to go over and say, we actually hear what
Well,
you're
they
saying.
overrode the outside consultant.
And that's gonna
That-
happen,
yeah,
because you make
that-
outside
no.
consultants the
Right,
commission.
so that's why
I
I'm
think the
saying to you
Porteous
that
code is
the,
critical.
yeah, we've already determined that from day one. But I think if we just put, there was some language that you agreed to with Richard, that being as restrictive as what you will like, I will like, they will like. We have to have that compromise language.
Yeah,
And
we
then-
have to figure out what that wording is, but.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not really expressing an opinion here.
No,
No, but you-
We understand,
just
it's
trying to
just
help
input, I need your
frame the
expertise while
issues.
you're here.
So,
Just address another issue before we get to that, is for what length do we want to put the lessee out to have to do the study? I mean, if it's a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, that should be,
it should be, but if you're gonna do two different studies, so what you're talking about?
Yes.
Chris, then the second study should be economic viability for the term of the lease.
For a 1-year lease, you want to go through this?
no, I'm saying we should consider that. No, what I'm
Okay.
saying is we shouldn't put the economic burden on someone who's having a lease for 2 years or 3 years to have to go out and get outside
All
audit.
right, so what you're saying is that in all cases, there should be a fair market value analysis,
Mhm.
yeah?
Yeah.
And in leases, in whatever we're gonna call these, Paul, agreements, leases, for more than 10 years, there should be a 5-year, whatever number, there should be a business analysis to see.
Yeah,
what they have
more
to do.
scrutiny for the longer the lease, because if it's a short lease, then you can get rid of these people.
Okay. Me, I would leave it with the commission, but I'm fine with that too.
All right, so why don't you amend it from what we have, put it on the record, get the second, and then let's call the question on it.
I'm not sure I know the wording.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we've agreed that any of these agreements have to be, any of these agreements have to be done by 4th this vote, correct?
We all agree on that.
All agreements need, the backup when the agreements come to the commission has to include a fair market value analysis done by a independent qualified firm. And for leases, whatever we call them, in excess of 10 years, the agenda item needs to be accompanied by analysis of the business plan of the proposed lessee. That's what I would say.
So you have a no assignability clause.
Pardon, and I'm right, I have no say.
So 4/5 vote for any
So,
lease.
mhm.
Let's go
That's the
through it.
motion. Who wants to second?
I want to go through it. Well,
Go ahead.
so 4/5 vote for any lease.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how many years.
And licensing.
But
Okay.
we're gonna call them all the same thing, that the whole thing is gone. They're gonna be called facility agreements or whatever Paul calls
Okay,
Dare I ask one thing?
Mhm.
it.
On the 4/5 vote, in the unlikely event that at the time something like this comes to the city commission, there are less than 5
And it's
in
too low.
office, what
Oh,
happens?
boy.
4.
Is it,
Delay it until we get a 5th commissioner.
okay, so then that's strictly a 4/5 vote. Or,
That's not
And
gonna
then
happen.
do 4/5 of supermajority.
Maybe,
That would be a small period.
and do you want me to clarify then, or leave it just 4/5 vote?
just say 4 votes.
4 votes.
4 votes,
That's very clear.
any lease.
That's clear.
Mhm.
But if you only have 3 in office, it's a problem, but maybe that's okay
Yeah.
before they lease city
4
property.
votes, any lease over 10 years.
Right. No, 4 votes,
Any lease at all.
even for 36 months.
So if somebody wants to do some type of lease or licensing agreement of public land for 6 months, can take 4/5 vote.
No, it's just for more than 1 year. That's
Right.
what's in here, more than 1 year and not.
I know, more than 50 years.
So
No,
6
no,
months.
anything more than 1 year, yeah, but it can't be more than 50. So less than 1 year, they get just a regular vote.
More than 50 years.
Or 1 year itself, because it says for more than 1 year, you can have a 1-year lease.
And then just a regular vote. Yeah, you don't like.
Say that again, Chris. It can be less. if it's
No,
not 30.
you can have it for 1 year, you do not have to have the 4 votes. If for more than 1 year,
2 years.
yeah, or,
1 year and 1 day.
yeah, or, yes, 18 months.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Why?
You guys might be. I think, because I can't think of, there's gotta be exceptions that are gonna come up where that's gonna be a little ridiculous because it's such a short term.
It's been forever, 1 to 50 years as unanimous. So we're actually reducing it from unanimous to majority.
Yeah, but we're
It's
taking out
always
the
been 1
loophole.
to
We're
50.
taking out the legal. What concerns you, Jack?
Well, what concerns me is just some minor lease comes up.
Yes,
It's only gonna be for 18 months
right.
and we're gonna mandate takes 4 votes to get it. I mean, I don't know.
Well, prior to this, it's in the
Before it
existing
used to
charter,
be
it says unanimous. That's
Have you
what
ever
the
seen,
existing
have you ever
charter
seen a
says.
2-year lease?
I have,
Have you ever seen one in the city of Fort Lauderdale?
but I've seen them zillions of them.
Okay,
The
if you guys, I'll go along
existing-
with it if you guys
The
want to,
existing
just,
charter
seems
today reads 1 to 50 years requires a unanimous vote. That's what it says today. We're actually reducing it by taking the unanimous
But
and
we're
switching
closing
to
the, but
4,
we're closing the big loophole.
by adding in the license.
by
okay,
making
well, maybe
this-
this will get massaged more, but I'll support it. If that's what everybody
So,
agrees.
well, you have it,
Because it says more than 1 year.
Okay,
So a 1-year lease
Right.
is not. on-
1 year is just gonna require just a majority.
It has
vote.
to be a motion.
okay,
A year, more than a year, it requires 4 votes.
Yes.
And if it's, and all of them. Why don't we say more than a year? Any of them over a year requires a, independent market analysis. And over 10 years requires an independent market analysis and a, analysis of business viability.
And no, yeah, and no assignability.
I noticed that.
And do you want to,
You're right.
do you want to specify what kind of consultant would perform that
Expensive,
analysis?
really expensive.
you mean,
Expensive, really expensive consulting.
Do you want,
Yes, Pat Riley.
do you want, I mean, would it be? Would it?
Because
we can
work in
would it be an
conjunction
accountant? Would it be,
I think it's just an independent.
I don't know.
Val, what do you think?
Pat,
I mean, it depends the magnitude and the dollar value of what we're looking at. I mean, I think everything that's fairly large usually has a consultant and maybe even more, just a report where they're following along to review the contract once it's there's like a comprehensive agreement already starting to be prepared. So it depends on the dollar amount, I think a lot. But I think most of the large projects, there is a consultant or there is someone that they hire to assist them with the whole transaction. I mean,
But what kind of consultant?
You're just
What's the name of the
saying
it
independent.
depends what it is.
Independent
depends what it
consultant,
is.
that's it.
I mean,
Yes,
you want
that's it.
someone that's an expert in that area for, for example, we have something with the
City.
construction, for example, or like the out there now is the advanced meter infrastructure. There's companies that are experts in that particular field, and that's what who you
Just say
want to bring in.
Qualified, independent consultant, yes.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
You have it, Paul.
Yes, with another question.
And assignability.
And at whose expense?
I don't think we need to go in there. I would.
Well,
It's almost like
it's
you
almost
would.
should be the city's expense, to give to the other guys to get
Or
the
the
result he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the
because
city
between the negotiations, you can
The
make
city needs to do
them
it.
react.
Right, but I would, if I was negotiating this, I would say,
Yeah.
listen, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to
You have to reimburse them to
reimburse.
be doing it.
I would just say,
You bet.
they really can't.
It's just an address.
Okay.
And just to add to that, normally I would expect that the city has a list of qualified consultants in the library. Even if the other party is selecting them, they are selecting the pre-approved list.
I don't think the other.
Engineering firms, we have that. I don't know.
Should be what?
I don't know what other kind of consultants we have.
What?
like that. We have engineering firms like that.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
We just aren't getting.
I
Okay,
know it.
what else do we have to do, Paul?
We have the parkland.
All right, so 821. You explain what I did on.
What page?
Exhibit N, page 1.
And exhibit N, pages 1 and 2.
All right, so I made the other section contingent or subject to this. And based on the discussions, there would be a special election for the sale of any land zone park.
Can we just start at the beginning of this? Why do we need the first paragraph of 821?
Right to sell, is that what you want?
The right to sell city property, we've already said they can sell it under certain circumstances, they can lease it under certain circumstances, what do we need, why do we need this?
I think it's good.
Well, by the way, I did set a previous meeting, I did this previously, except as provided by law, because there are certain restraints.
No, but I mean, what is the reason for the first part of the paragraph to begin with?
I'm not sure.
Why can't we just go start with?
Yeah, and the city shall not sell.
Yeah, that's
for lease.
But that was a Crane bond.
It's not.
No,
That's the existing language, I don't know.
What does it mean? I mean, what does it mean in this? Non-illusory. On account of the method source means of the such properties required. It's basically releasing the city from any requirements. And if there's no requirements, there's no requirement.
Yeah,
I don't think we.
since this is particularly applies to a park.
Public,
Yeah.
yeah. Why is it called public property instead of parks? Paul?
Because then becomes ambiguous with the other.
Right. It should be called parks.
Yeah.
Parks.
Yeah.
I think because of that first paragraph.
Yeah, take the first paragraph out.
That should be
Change
done.
the heading.
That was
By
it.
the way, this. The way it currently addresses land zone park was a. Charter amendment back in 2004. Where, well, I'll get to that in a minute.
Chris, you were on the thought of that
Okay,
thing.
so we agreed to take out the first paragraph.
What's gone right?
I'm gonna take it, unless you come back to us and say that's a terrible thing to do. Okay, now let's say anything to the contrary, of this chart, the city shall not sell or transfer Okay, so we should say sell or enter into a facility. We should use the fine term that we did earlier for all those other things. Right?
Okay, but that's gonna be in the second paragraph.
That's where I am. I'm already in the second paragraph.
All right, I split them off because one I made by special election, I made required, made a requirement to a special election, and the other one for leasing.
Yeah, but not gonna use this word lease anymore. Right?
Right.
Okay, so let's just start with the first one. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary. So you're gonna sell or enter into a, whatever we call it, right, facility agreement. For any land, zone, park in accordance with the blah, 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 except it's be approved in a special election called pursuant to 711.
Wait a second, do you want this to apply to leases? Well, the leases are in the second paragraph, that's what I'm saying. Are you on the second paragraph? You're on the first.
I eliminated the first. Oh,
Well, I
No,
separated
we're
them out.
talking, you're talking about this.
The remaining, the remaining first paragraph.
Okay, you're talking.
okay, you're
Yeah,
down.
you're the wrong second. paragraph.
I'm in the second paragraph of your draft.
Okay.
And I'm saying that it should include our facility, whatever you're gonna call these things, facility agreements. And that's it.
No, that's my point. That's my point. No, I separated out sale and lease. So previously
Sell or transfer.
they were together because the charter amendment in 2004 made it subject to a unanimous vote, a unanimous vote for either one. So I made it stricter for sale of land zone park so that it requires a special election.
Yes,
But the
facility agreement.
facility type
Requires what?
agreements requires a unanimous vote. I left that the way I left it the way it was done in 2000.
Public, yeah, we have.
Right, the public, we're gonna sell it for, we're gonna sell it, then it requires, and if we're just gonna enter into a facility agreement, it's going to require a unanimous vote.
I have one other question. Yeah. Why are we limiting it to parks that were November 10, 2004? I mean, the city, as I understand it, has recently gone through its inventory of land that is parks, but wasn't zone parks, but have now changed that zoning. We want to protect all parks, not just going back to 2004.
So this is in addition. Land zone park.
To remove that
Just want to remove
designation.
the date out of it.
Yeah, leave the date out of it and say anything that
In
is
case
currently.
something hasn't been rezoned.
Yeah,
is
but
that what you're
anything
saying?
that is currently zoned as park, to remove that designation so they can get around all.
Okay, and really, the word such designation is really not, it's very loosey goosey. It should say remove that designation from the city's unified land development regulations. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's such designation, I really what that means, such designation. I mean, I do, but it's,
I mean, it's a park, it's a park, doesn't matter if it's a park in 2004.
I agree, that's right.
So delete the date and then add the designation in your right.
Are there any parks that are not designated park in the land development regulation?
They're working, we need Anthony for that probably, but they are working on that now. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a
Well,
big
that's,
question.
that means they can slip them under the,
That came up with planning and zoning. Those have to change, make sure that all
Yeah.
we're,
Land that is
Yeah.
currently operating as a park and even named a park is zoned as.
but still, yeah, they just never went through the process. But that happened over years, obviously. But I think everything is pretty
okay,
much caught
any
up.
land zoned at park. Zoned at park,
They have some.
do we have to say or which may be zoned as park? Do we have to add, if they're gonna add some other?
I think that's.
How
pretty
about
much
zoned or used or utilized?
Questions have ambiguity.
Okay, you
What
wanna
could
say
be zoned?
It's zoned as park, so. You're not worried about somebody saying, well, it wasn't zoned as park on the day the charter was adopted. It's
No, but
zoned-
anything that is zoned as a park when they're taking
Okay.
whatever
All right.
action.
Yeah, okay, I think that's fine, yeah. All right. Well, you have it?
And just to move on to the point I was gonna make, I feel like after we've done so much work dealing with the notion of special elections, I would be a lot more comfortable it's approved by a public referendum as opposed to board special election. Because I think that we've made it very clear when those are going to be held.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's not really a special election, it's really a referendum.
Yeah.
That's a good point
Yeah.
there. Very good. Okay.
That's it, except that, wait a second, I believe, even though it coincides with the November election, I believe it's still a special election for this purpose, because the charter deals with special elections for other than candidate elections.
I see what you're saying. Well, but I think
I
it's,
believe it
we
refers to
could check with
special.
the supervisory election, but I believe it's a referendum held at a special election or a referendum held
Okay.
in conjunction with the general election. I think that Harrison's right. It should be a referendum.
But by charter, I believe it's also a special election.
Could be a special election, right?
Okay, we can actually say both things, referendum and a special election.
Why does it have to be a special election? Why can't it be a general election?
Because even if.
Oh, it's a special
annual
election held in
election.
conjunction with the general election.
I think that's right. Okay. So I'll try to incorporate both. I'll look at the section. But I believe it's special election for other purposes, other than candidates. And I believe it's special.
I see, I see what you're saying.
I think anytime any referendum is a special election.
Yeah, all right.
Notwithstanding that it's in conjunction with the general.
Got it.
I believe that's the case.
I think that was a good night's work. Okay, so I would suggest that we come up with a date, so the junior doesn't have to do it. But
And vote on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, when you use the word just park, you want the legal description of the zoning, which is however the ordinance is written when they're transferring it. And it's called park, recreation and open space, parentheses P3 or P district. That's the language when you put it in the resolutions. Which is not parks, it's called park, and that's coming off of the ordinance readings just happened where they transfer land over to the left over to the parks.
oh, you look to see what the right words to use are there?
Yeah, this language, I believe, is from the 2004 amendment. I don't know why they called it.
Well, just see, you'll have to see the right
Have
words. to use.
And I'm just taking that off.
Should we,
Let's just vote for something, just if we vote. I vote on whatever we were talking.
I second that.
Go ahead.
Give it to Chris.
No. Give it to.
Are we wrapping up?
Well,
The reason I'm asking is because we never really got an answer to how much time you would need to do a presentation. And this is gonna be critical for us.
Hold on 1 second, hold on, you guys are hijacking our meeting. Let us vote on this number.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I make the motion that we approve the discussion dealing with the parks,
Sale of
or
park,
the sale of parkland.
and sale or lease.
Yeah, as we've been previously discussing, Paul bring it back to us.
Who's second?
Okay, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, okay. Now,
can we go over the dates?
well, let's just do the date for our next meeting to
Right,
wrap this up.
so there was a bunch of dates that were,
Excuse me. So what we've taken right now in the work that we just did, then needs to be put into a communication
We're
to,
gonna, at the next meeting, we're gonna set a meeting for next week.
I understand that, I understand that,
Consensus.
but we have a whole section still here about new business, which we need to roll over to the next meeting too. Right.
That's the next
So,
meeting, if we just.
but they can start working on a report to get sent in as a communication to the commission. And I want to make sure that they understand that that's where they need to start doing it.
Okay, so Paul, Anthony is not here, whoever is here representing Anthony, I don't know. Paul, we need to start, oh, Junior is here. We need to start for our next
Taking-
meeting, which is gonna be next week. We need to have a draft of a report to the city commission which outlines all of the amendments that we're recommending.
And that would start us with the communication to the commission,
Right.
what we would be bringing forward.
Correct.
So at your next meeting, after reviewing the report, that's when you'll make a motion for the communication to the commission.
I just want you all to put in your mind of what we need
So I'd
to
like
add
to
to that.
have-
Is
So that report needs to be ready
that's the white
by
paper?
your next meeting.
Before the next meeting, so we can
Except-
review it.
So
If I may, some of the things in that report have not been final.
I know, so we'll have to change this, yeah, but the basic concept of most of the stuff, 90% of the report can be
We
written
get done.
like right away. Judy's right. And then it's attached to the report should be all of the drafts. I would just do however you think the city commission wants it, whether they want existing line through and clean, or however you think. Why don't you speak with the city attorney about it?
Probably,
However they want it.
I think it's helpful.
Anyway, those things need to be attached to the report neatly, like with tabs, and we'll like do a professional. So, okay, next thing is let's decide next week when we can meet.
The 11th.
So I'm looking at some dates here that I think, the clerk's office had shared with, that this room is available. But that was back on March 21st. So,
Jania, it's David.
hi,
I just confirmed with IT a little bit ago. The FXE is available next Thursday.
okay.
Let's do that.
I got that.
So will we have a quorum for the 11th?
We will.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so just make sure, Jania, just
Need a
please
motion?
pass.
Yes.
Yeah, pass a motion to have a second meeting this month with the date and time.
Okay.
Make a motion, we have a meeting at 5:30 on April 11th in this room.
I second that. Unless you want.
All in favor?
I don't care.
We're in agreement.
Subject to refreshments.
Can we have wine next week instead of sandwiches? I'm just asking.
I don't think alcohol should be around.
I'm kidding, for God's
In the
sake.
office.
Well, relax.
Okay,
Chill out.
so, okay, that's that. I think it will take 45 minutes to an hour to present this stuff to your board.
Okay.
So
But, and
we
then,
have Chip Lamarca and then you. And then who presents it? All of you or one of you or what happens?
we'll figure
We'll
it out.
decide.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
But also, I think that we should, well, they'll have this report in advance of the meeting, of your meeting, right? Because we're gonna send this report to the commission on,
Which is why I want to get the report started to be worked on now, so it's not.
we're gonna give this report to the commission next Friday or Monday.
Would we be allowed to share that with members?
Yes.
It's public. It's
Top
Okay,
secret.
good. That would be very
So
helpful.
you'll have that. And I think it'll take a half hour, and then you can have questions on.
Okay.
But I would need at least an hour.
Okay,
And just remember, everyone, too, that by the time we get done, nothing can go on the ballot that exceeds 75 words. So that's
I made a note.
Chair?
work, that's part of it, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, David, so when the board presents in front of the Council of Civic Association, do they need to do a motion at the next meeting at who's going to represent the board?
No, the only thing what we would have to do if multiple people from the board wanted to speak, we would have to notice that meeting. And if two board members spoke at that meeting, then minutes would be required. So I guess that, that's the decision of the board, but usually it's usually one person that would speak at it. And that doesn't mean you can't be there. It's just, it should be one speaker there presenting the information, unless, again, we do it as a sunshine meeting and take minutes.
Would the
Still-
recording that we
still-
do for the meeting be
Jim.
adequate for the minutes, or do you have to have your own minutes?
We would have to create minutes from it. I mean, if
Okay.
we wouldn't have to have a minutes person there, similar to, we don't have a minutes person there tonight. They listen to the recording and do it. But yeah, we still have to make sure that we have staff there to record where the meeting is and all that too, so.
Thanks, David.
You're
Thank
welcome. You're welcome.
We're good?
you wanted to do it, any else?
Second.
Judy, I just wanted to ask, who's gonna draft this report?
Paul?
I think Anthony should. I'm actually supposed to be off Thursday, Friday, but. But it needs to, I mean, it needs to basically be detailed. It needs to go through each one of these charter amendments, say, give a summary of what we've done. Succinctly. So we need a phone call to be made in order to free up your time, then you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, because we're gonna have to start identifying what we want the next go around, and that's what I want to use the next meeting at.
Honestly, I think that if we can do it at the end, but I think honestly, at the next meeting, we get through this report.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I want to do this, get through this, and then identify what can we be moving on because we are just on go to board.
See you next weekend.
Do we close the meeting? The meeting adjourned?
Well, there's
There's a motion, second. Do you want to vote on?
Who's second?
Yes. Otherwise, we can't.
Okay. Because we still have